Chapter 713. Shuesei rarely reflected on his life because he felt that everyone had let him down, he was not in the wrong. Just like Shuai Lian, she borrowed his hand to escape from the sacred land and married him, but she did not love him. This was all Shuai Lian's fault. Just like when he became the king of the Snow Clan, those people did not respect him, it was those people who were blind. He knew that the reason he became the king was because those elders thought he was easy to manipulate and obedient. But he was also a man, he also had great ambitions, he hoped to achieve great things, making everyone kneel at his feet and worship him. Finally, when he saw the goo poison, he felt that his chance had come. He made a deal with Shuai Lian, he helped her leave the sacred land, she stole the holy stone, the goo poison and the antidote, then he personally destroyed the sacred land, most of those elders died in his hands. At the same time, Dayu state invaded. He felt that this was a chance, although his snow country was small, there would be a day when he could enter the central plains. Later on, snow country was destroyed, Shuai Lian was taken away by the king of Dayu state, he had nothing, his head was filled with the delusion of reviving his country, but he did not have the strength to do so, he could only place all his hopes on the holy stone. He bewitched some patriotic Snow Clan people to work for him, using their vengeful mentality, he did many strange things. He had always been working with evil people, he had always been asking a tiger for its skin, he had never given up on reviving his country, other people's lives did not matter to him, he only wanted power, he only wanted to prove himself. So there was no doubt that he was a bad person. And now, this bad person, was pushed into a pile of insects by another bad person, the person he had harmed before was holding him and running for his life. Shuesei suddenly felt that other than reviving his country, he also cherished his life, because he did not want to die at all. Gong Yimo was already exhausted, but when she heard the sound of water, her eyes lit up. She once again pulled herself together and ran towards the water. Soon, she saw an underground waterway. This waterway seemed to be formed naturally, because they had hollowed out the mountain, the spring water flowed inside, forming a barrier. To a human, it was not difficult to cross, but the rapid flow of water was not friendly to insects. Gong Yimo used her qinggong to cross the water, seeing that the insects were washed away. She let out a long sigh of relief. She was really going to die from exhaustion. If someone were to ambush her at this moment, she definitely wouldn't have the strength to fight back. As for Snow, he was lying on the ground half dead. Gong Yimo guessed that the bug from earlier was poisonous, causing his injuries to worsen, which was why he was in this state. Alright, stop playing dead. Go out and let Si Wuyan take a look at you. You won't die. Snow suddenly raised her head. Because of the human skin mask, Gong Yimo could not see his face. She could only see that his eyes were bloodshot, as if he was enduring something. Gong Yimo felt weird being stared at by him. She glared at him while gasping for breath. What are you doing? Lying on the ground, he raised his head and suddenly asked, Is my mother still alive? If he didn't mention it, Gong Yimo would have almost forgotten that she was a regular resident of Zhao prison. Gong Dai didn't kill her, and neither did Gong Yimo. She rolled her eyes. She's alive, and her servant Shuai is also alive. Snow asked again, Is your mother doing well? Gong Yimo felt that it was even stranger. What has my mother doing well got to do with you? Snow only looked at her quietly. That gaze actually had a trace of indescribable sorrow. Actually, you're not my daughter. What? Gong Yimo was a little shocked now. Then whose daughter am I? Snow laid on the ground and slowly said, Back then, the reason why Shuai Lian came to find me for cooperation, was because she could no longer stay in the sacred lands. Not only was she used to test poison, she also had to face the harassment of her half-brother. I've never touched her before. Such explosive news made Gong Yimo a little agitated. Her little face was tangled up. You mean, I'm actually my mother, and her brother's abnormal love daughter? Snow nodded. Gong Yimo smiled delightedly. I say, how can I be your child? You're so stupid and vicious. And always have some unrealistic delusions. Snow didn't refute and only said. I know you want to use my blood to detoxify the poison. In actual fact, before you, no one knew that after taking the antidote, his blood can also detoxify the poison. If you need it, take it. Gong Yimo was curious. Are you alright? You're obviously a vicious person, why are you acting like you're sacrificing yourself for others? At this moment, his thin lips moved and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Gong Yimo was shocked as she stretched out her hand to check, but Snow grabbed her hand. He had great strength, and as he spat out blood, he stared at her. At this moment, she then realized that Snow's hand was filled with green veins. Obviously he was deeply poisoned. Impossible. After he was poisoned by the goo, there was no other poison that could harm him. I only have one request. His voice turned hoarse as he swallowed mouthful after mouthful of blood. My face. Don't look at my face. Gong Yimo frowned. She didn't expect that Snow was already in such a state. Why would he still care about a human skin mask? This face was not bad, but was it more important than his life? His hand gradually loosened. Snow Lotus likes handsome men, don't uncover my face. Gong Yimo went into a blank and immediately said, alright, I won't look at your face. Hurry and let me see what's wrong with you. Snow saw that she had agreed, and just as he wanted to say something, his throat moved and he spat out another mouthful of blood. But following the blood, Gong Yimo was horrified to see a thick worm crawling out from his mouth. It had just peeked its head out from his mouth when it was scared back by Gong Yimo's scream. Snow was already dead. He closed his eyes and actually died in peace. Gong Yimo took a few steps back from Snow. Obviously, the poison would not kill him, but when the poisonous worm entered his body, it directly bit off his life force. This scene was so terrifying that it made her hair stand on end. She hurriedly checked her body to see if there were any terrifying worms on it. At this moment, a cold glint suddenly pierced towards her. Gong Yimo was stunned by the scene in front of her, and by the time she realized that someone was sneak attacking her, it was already too late. She was about to be stabbed. Gong Yimo subconsciously hugged her stomach. But at the next second, Scarface was sent flying. And coincidentally, he fell into the water flow, and it was unknown if he was dead or alive. Gong Yimo fell into a warm embrace, and her originally tightly shut eyes secretly opened up and saw Gong Dai's face, which was so black that it was almost emitting smoke. She had a shock. Her heart started to pound uncontrollably. Gong Dai. She suddenly thought that Gong Dai must have chased after the poisonous worm, and his face was so black. Could it be that he was poisoned? Did you get bitten by the worm? Don't scare me. Gong Yimo grabbed onto Gong Dai's arm tightly as her face was filled with anxiety. The shock caused by Snow's death had not dissipated, and her eyes were filled with fear. Gong Dai's face turned even darker. Chapter 7:14. When Gong Yimo saw that Gong Dai was not replying, she realized that something was wrong. However, it was too late when she wanted to run away. This was because Gong Dai had already grabbed her hand tightly. When he saw the wound on Gong Yimo's hand, his pupils constricted. All the heartache in his heart turned into anger. Royal sister, sometimes I really want to break your legs. Let's see where you can run to. Gong Yimo blinked rapidly. Gong Dai's gaze made her feel uneasy. She retracted her hand. I didn't do it on purpose. It was an emergency. Si Wuyen, Si Wuyen. Gong Dai grabbed her hand and pulled. This allowed Gong Yimo to lean closer to his chest. This also allowed her to feel Gong Dai's anger even more. No one is worth you risking your life for. No one is worth it. That thick chill made Gong Yimo unable to move. She no longer had the domineering aura from before. Her body was tense as if she was going to explode at any moment. You can't do it either, I can't do it either. Gong Dai finally hugged her. He closed his eyes in pain. However, Gong Yimo's head was pressed against his shoulder, so she did not see it. If I fall into a trap, I can only say that I'm useless. Even if I die, I won't regret it. You're not allowed to save me. Gong Yimo felt his body stiffen. She knew that she had really scared him this time. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Can you forgive me? But in her heart, she was thinking that if such a day really came, even if she had to die, she would do it for him. Perhaps this was the same reason why he didn't want her to save him even if he died. If such a day really came, they both hoped that the other could live well. However, how could they live well without each other? At this moment, Si Wuyan had also caught up. Along the way, he was completely stunned by Gong Dai. The poisonous insects along the way were all crushed. They were really crushed. Anyway, he had not seen a single living insect along the way. Instead, he was disgusted by the insect corpses. It seemed that Gong Dai had vented all his anger on these insects. What a pity. If only there were a few left for him to test for poison. Finally, he saw the man and woman leaning against each other. His heart was instantly filled with mixed feelings. He could not describe what he was feeling. It was a little painful, but also a little gratified. In the end, all the discomfort turned into a bitter smile. Perhaps only a man like Gong Dai was suitable for a troublemaker like Imo. Most men would be good if they did not drag her down. How could they protect her and share her burdens? Therefore, he did not step forward. Instead, he looked at the couple through the flowing water and waited silently. Gong Emo was a little tired and almost fell asleep on Gong Ju's body. Then she suddenly thought of something and excitedly said, Gong Ju. You killed that Ammer. Just now, she saw Scarface fall into the water. She did not know if he was dead or alive. Gong Dai hugged her for a while. His mood was finally not as agitated as before. However, his face was still cold. I hit him on the left side of his chest. He added, I used 80% of my strength. Gong Yimo was relieved. 80% of Gong Dai's strength was enough to shatter Scarface's heart. If he was washed into the undercurrent, there were many submerged reefs. He would definitely die. Then, Gong Yimo said excitedly, Gong Dai. I found the antidote. Gong Dai was stunned. Then, he was ecstatic. He grabbed her arm with some force. Where is it? Gong Yimo still had some lingering fear when she thought of the previous scene. She pointed at Snow's corpse and said, during the fight, I accidentally bit him. After swallowing a mouthful of his blood, it temporarily suppressed the Holy Stone's sound infection. He had taken the antidote. Therefore, his blood contains the antidote. Gong Dai frowned when he heard that. His face darkened again. He could not imagine what kind of crisis the royal sister had to bite the enemy to escape. Seeing that Gong Dai was about to get angry again, Gong Yimo reacted quickly and said, But he's dead. I don't know if his blood can still be used after he's dead. Gong Dai looked at her deeply. Finally, he let her go temporarily. He planned to go to Snow's side to take a look. Gong Yimo reminded him softly, Be careful. There are worms in his body. It's very scary. Gong Dai nodded. He felt something and suddenly turned in Si Wuyan's direction. Gong Yimo then realized that Si Wuyan was also there. She was instantly embarrassed. However, this was not the time to be shy. She quickly said, Si Wuyan, are you okay? That's great. Come and take a look at his corpse. See if it's useful. Si Wuyan nodded and walked over. When it came to serious matters, Si Wuyan was still very serious. He and Gong Dai approached Snow. Then, Si Wuyan said softly, can you force the poisonous worms out of his body? Gong Dai looked at him. Step back. Si Wuyan stepped back. Under the light of the torch, the meridians in Snow's body bulged. It was extremely terrifying. After Si Wuyan stepped back a little, Gong Dai narrowed his eyes. After his inner strength materialized, he directly lifted Snow's body into the air. That invisible inner strength began to move up from Snow's feet. Soon, Snow's abdomen bulged a few times. It was forced up by this terrifying force and finally drilled out of his mouth. Not just one, but 3. Gong Yimo saw this scene and felt her scalp go numb again. The 3 worms were covered in blood. They wanted to run away as soon as they came out, but they were directly crushed by Gong Dai. Blood splattered everywhere, but it did not even stain Gong Dai's clothes. Gong Yimo could not help but sigh at the difference between the 6th and 8th tier. But she also had worries in her heart, but she did not voice them out. Wind in nature was an extremely profound cultivation technique. Other than requiring the cultivator's talent and perseverance, it also required the cultivator's state of mind and many other elements. Gong Dai had started cultivating at the age of 6, and now he had reached the 8th tier of wind and nature at the age of 18. As for her, she had only reached the 6th tier after a lifetime of experience. This was not because the difference in talent was too great, but because Gong Dai had taken a shortcut. Gong Yimo heard from Lo Chi that Gong Dai had almost gone berserk and was forced to stop. Only then did he have his current strength. He was like an inflated balloon, not stable at all. If nothing happened in these 2 years, Gong Dai could slowly build up his foundation and fill in the gaps between the 7th and 8th tiers. There would not be any problems. She was just afraid that something unexpected would happen and cause his inflated strength to collapse. Seeing that the worms had been killed, Si Wuyan did not say anything. He took a step forward and held on to Snow's body. But in the end, he shook his head. That worm just now was one of the most prolific venomous worms. Now that the body is already filled with its venomous eggs, and with the venom of this worm, I'm afraid his blood cannot be used. Chapter 7:15. Gong Yimo was very disappointed. What a pity. She thought that she could use Snow's blood to get rid of the goo poison. She did not expect such an unforeseen event to occur. Gong Yimo, do you have a pouch on you? Si Wuyan was a little conflicted. He now knew that Gong Yimo had a secret. Gong Yimo nodded and took out a leather wine pouch for him. Si Wuyan lowered his head and filled the pouch with blood. Although it can't be used, his blood contains the secret to the goo poison. There is no doubt about this. I'll bring it back and try it. Gong Yimo nodded. That was all they could do. Si Wuyan looked at his face. He seems to be wearing a human skin mask. Don't move. Gong Yimo suddenly stopped him. I promised him that I would not uncover his face. All right, Si Wuyan retracted his hand. It was not that he had to look. It was not appropriate to expose the corpse here. Gong Yimo remembered that he and Snow Lotus knew each other, so she simply buried him. When everyone came out, the sky was already bright. Gong Yimo curled up tiredly in Gong Dai's arms. Because of the poisonous gas in the miasma cloud forest, Si Wuyan had to search for a long time in the cave that was almost destroyed by Gong Yimo. Finally, He found some pills in a luxurious cave residence. Only then did he bring the rescued people out. Outside the miasma cloud forest, Kim Yoon had been waiting for an entire night. When he saw that Gong Yimou and Si Wuyen had returned safely, Kim Yoon finally smiled. When he saw the people behind them, he was even more shocked. He did not know how long the Snow Clan had been hiding here. They had actually captured so many people. Kim Yoon hurriedly sent people to pacify them. They returned to the capital together. When they returned, everyone came out to welcome them. When they saw that they had saved many people, they were a little surprised. A few days later, almost everyone knew that there was a cult's nest in the miasma cloud forest not far from the capital. The living people there were refining pills. Their methods were extremely vicious and cruel. And the princess from Daiyu State was extremely brave. She killed her way in and out with a sword. Not only did she save people, but she also destroyed the cult's nest. Almost all the bad people were killed. Those who were not all died in the forest. They could never come out to harm people. In the past few months, the haze over everyone's head gradually dissipated. Many of the rescued people were from the capital. After they were taken back by their relatives, they were even more grateful to the princess. In addition, the contribution that the princess from Daiyu State had made to Yuheng a few years ago was dug up. Not only did the storytellers brag about it, there were even people who drew portraits of the princess and circulated them among the people. The influence was so great that even Kim Yoon laughed and joked about it. He said that he was not as popular as a foreign princess. Si Wuyen had been studying the snow-colored blood and those goo worms. Kim Yoon was in charge of interrogating those captured from the miasma cloud forest. They didn't know much, but they did confess some things. For example, when Si Wuyen came previously, they wanted to take him down. However, the 1,000 people that Si Wuyen brought were all carrying drugs. One of the drugs made it especially difficult for them to control. As soon as they got close to the drugs, the goo worms in their brains would start churning. Naturally, they couldn't control the poison people to attack. Instead, they allowed Si Wuyen to enter the city safely. They only made their move after he put away the drugs. Si Wuyen then searched for something that could restrain them from the drugs he brought. In a tea house, a delicate-looking young master was drinking tea by the window. When he heard the storyteller say that the princess from Daiyu State was 7 feet tall and had the strength to move mountains and rivers, he couldn't help but spit out his tea. The tall man sitting beside him frowned slightly and handed him a handkerchief. Gong Dai, do you think they're really talking about me? Why do I feel like I'm the man they're talking about? Gong Dai glanced coldly at the storytellers and said indifferently, that's good too. What's good about it? Gong Dai placed the peeled melon seeds on a plate in front of Gong Yimou. This way, no one will have any improper thoughts about you. At this moment, a scholar beside him suddenly said, although such an amazing woman can't be kept in the inner room, she can be kept in the outer room. Another scholar nodded as he drank his tea. If the princess is really like what this man said, she must be unmarried. I heard that she's almost 19 years old and is still unmarried. Doesn't that mean we still have a chance to take the princess? After all, there aren't many people who can appreciate the princess's inner qualities. Gong Yimou giggled and pressed Gong Dai's hand to calm him down. Gong Dai, do you admire my outer appearance, or my inner qualities? Gong Dai's cold air was pressed down by her soft little hand, and he said helplessly. Royal sister, you're being naughty again. Say it. Gong Yimou put one hand on the table and smiled brightly. Do you like my face, or do you like my personality? Gong Dai narrowed his eyes, and his tall body suddenly moved closer as he said softly, don't worry. Even if you're really 7 feet tall, have the strength to move mountains and rivers, and can keep a house in check, I'll still like you. Gong Yimou blushed secretly. Gong Dai started to talk about business again. Shuolian is coming. Why didn't you wait in the palace? Why did you run out in such a hurry? Gong Yimo saw that he was serious. She glared at him, but her expression gradually sank. We only knew that mother was coming these 2 days. But when we were in the cave, that Scarface asked me to say hello to my mother, which means they already knew. So I was a little worried. Gong Dai lowered his eyelids, thinking about it in his heart. Gong Yimo continued. Also, of the 3 antidotes, 1 is missing, and the other 2 were eaten by Shuolian and Shuasa. Their blood may be able to cure the goo poison, but Shuasa is dead, and only Shuolian is left. She frowned. It's fine if those crazy people don't know that their blood has the effect of curing the poison, but if they know, won't Shuolian be in danger? Gong Dai patted her bandaged hand to comfort her. It's okay. When she comes, let her accompany you until you give birth. After everything is settled, let her leave. It seems like that's the only way, Gong Emo sighed, but then she heard people whispering to each other. Look, those 2 men are holding hands. When Gong Emo heard this, she quickly wanted to withdraw her hand. Gong Dai smiled and leaned forward to whisper more intimately into her ear. His special hoarse voice made Gong Emo blush again. You're cuter when you're shy. Gong Emo glared at him and pushed him away a little. You mean there are times when I'm not cute? Yes, when you run around. Gong Emo puffed up her cheeks and said angrily, then when am I cutest? Gong Dai blinked. When that exquisite face showed a little smile, the entire 2nd floor seemed to be silent for a moment. The cutest time is naturally in bed. Chapter 7:16. The 2 of them fooled around as they waited. Finally, Shuolian's carriage entered the city in the evening. Gong Dai hurriedly ordered someone to invite her up. This time, they had not met for too long, but the 2 women were very excited. Gong Yimo saw that Shuolian only brought a few attendants with her and asked curiously, Mother, where's Godfather? Shuolian smiled and said, he's a busy man now. There are more and more Snow Clan people coming to Lotus Country. He has to help them settle down. Where would he have the time to follow me around? Although she said that, Gong Yimo could still hear the sweet protectiveness in her words. She sighed and said, you 2 have such a good relationship. At this moment, Gong Dai glanced at her, his expression clearly saying that their relationship was even better. At this moment, because most of the people in the tea house had gone back to eat, there was no one on the 2nd floor. Gong Yimo and Shuolian chatted for a while before suddenly asking seriously. Mother, I heard that you have a half-brother. Shuolian's smile froze on her face. Who told you that? Shuolian. That bastard. Shuolian slammed the table angrily. Isn't it just that he came to find me and I didn't let him in? He actually came here to gossip. Where is he now? Gong Yimo saw that although she was angry, there was not much disgust in her words. She said softly, he's already dead. Shuolian suddenly widened her eyes. After a long while, she asked with a trembling voice, dead? Who killed him? After saying that, she seemed to feel that she had misspoken and said in a low voice, that person, he deserved to die. I don't know who killed him for the sake of the people. Gong Yimo sighed, he died from a poisonous bug piercing through his heart. Before he died, he told me about my background. Shuolian suddenly felt uneasy. He told you everything? Gong Yimo nodded, yes. When Shuolian heard that, it was as if all her energy had been sucked out. She sighed softly and cursed, that bastard. Gong Yimo saw that she was in low spirits, but still asked, the person that Shuolian mentioned, your half-brother. What happened back then? Mother, can you tell me? Shuolian was silent. This question directly reminded her of the past that she didn't want to remember even if she died. Every scene was a nightmare. There's nothing that can't be said. Shui Lian shook her head and sighed. At that time, that person wanted to humiliate me several times, but he was discovered by my father and severely punished. If it wasn't because he was extremely talented in witchcraft, my father would have killed such a bastard child for the sake of his own reputation. Although I didn't kill him, I didn't allow him to leave the Holy Land. That's why Shui never saw him. Shulian paused for a moment, but when she thought that her daughter must have asked about this person for a reason, she endured the discomfort in her heart and continued. All this time, I've been avoiding him as much as I could. But one day, he still took advantage of me. I was humiliated by him. Shui Lian didn't even dare to raise her head when she said this, but Fu Ye knew all of this. With her husband's support, she was much calmer than before. After being humiliated, I could no longer endure all of this. Whether it was being used by my biological father to test poison, or being violated by my half-brother, it was all unbearable. So I cooperated with Shulian and married him, taking the opportunity to poison the people in the Holy Land. Speaking of this, she smiled deeply. Because Shulian bore the majority of the blame, so the world didn't know that the real person who poisoned them was me. It was me who poisoned everyone in the Holy Land, including my father. Perhaps you feel that I'm very scary. Gong Yimo shook her head and said seriously, it's not your fault. Mother, you've suffered in the past. With her words of comfort, Shui Lian felt much better. She was afraid that Gong Yimo would look down on her and think that she was vicious. Then is that beast also dead? Gong Yimo was full of contempt for that man, so when she asked this question, she was also furious. Shui Lian shook her head. Back then, he did those things to me. Perhaps he was afraid that my father would pursue the matter, so he ran away in the night. Speaking of this, Shui Lian sneered. But he didn't have it easy either. When he violated me, I used a dagger to cut his face. The dagger was poisoned, so if he didn't die, his face should be ruined. Gong Yimo was shocked. You mean, that person's face is very likely to have a scar? Gong Yimo's shock made Shui Lian have a bad feeling in her heart. Could it be, you've seen someone with a scar on his face? Gong Yimo nodded solemnly. He also said, to let me say hello to you. This means that he already knew that you were coming to find me. Shui Lian pondered for a moment, then her beautiful face turned pale. You're saying that there's a spy around me? Gong Yimo nodded. I can't rule out this possibility. As she spoke, she glanced at the people around her, causing them to reveal a terrified expression. Shui Lian sighed in relief. Don't worry, even if there's a spy, it won't be them. Shui Lian looked at her followers reassuringly, a trace of gentleness in her eyes. They were all specially arranged for me by my husband, so I can trust them. That's good. Speaking of this, Shui Lian became anxious again. They won't do anything to my husband, right? Gong Dai then said in a low voice, I'll have someone send a message to him. Don't be impatient. With the regent's words, Shui Lian felt a lot more at ease. Then, the two chatted about something else. Since you're here, mother, wait for me to give birth before you leave. Shui Lian was a little troubled, so you'll have to stay for 5 months. Gong Yimo pretended to be aggrieved and pouted. Is 5 months very long? Why, are you so anxious to go back and stay by your husband's side? Your biological daughter can't even get 5 months. Whoa, I'm so pitiful. Gong Yimo ran to Gong Dai to act pitiful. Gong Dai hurriedly hugged his little wife, then glared at his mother-in-law with great displeasure. Shui Lian blushed at her words. What are you talking about? I didn't say I wouldn't agree. Seeing that Shui Lian agreed, Gong Yimo looked up at Gong Dai with a triumphant smile in her eyes. Gong Ju, on the other hand, was amused and touched her face gently. The two chatted for a while more, then prepared to go back. When they arrived at the palace and got off the carriage, Shui Lian turned around and saw Gong Dai get off the other carriage first. Then, he immediately turned around and gently carried Gong Yimo down. This action was so natural that it seemed like he had done it thousands of times. His careful movements made Shui Lian a little envious. Of course, Fu Ye was also very good to her, so she was content. Her daughter was even luckier than her. She didn't meet the wrong person. She met the right person from the beginning, and they trusted each other and relied on each other. Seeing that their relationship was so good, Shui Lian smiled gently. She thought to herself, as expected of my daughter. Her ability to control men is extraordinary. Even a person like the Prince Regent was completely bowing down to her, which made her, as a mother, feel a little proud. Chapter 717. In the evening, Gong Ju was reviewing the reports as usual. He was the Prince Regent. Although he had 6 subordinates who could share the burden of government affairs, there were still some things that he had to handle. Moreover, he had shops all over the 4 countries. The bank was also the first to cooperate with the other 3 countries. In addition, there was the construction of the cross-country horse ranch, the construction of the national highway, the construction of the shipyard, and so on. It could be said that he was very busy. Gong Yimo stuck out her tongue embarrassedly after entering the door. Gong Dai was so busy, but she kept troubling him. Thinking about it, she was really a troublemaker. So she sneaked behind him. At this moment, Gong Dai was staring at the reports. His eyes were cold, and his thin lips were slightly pursed. For some reason, he gave off an unapproachable feeling. However, when a pair of small hands landed on his temples, his brows suddenly relaxed. His thin lips curved, and he actually revealed a natural smile. "Didn't I ask you to sleep first?" Gong Yimo pressed his forehead lightly and heavily. "My husband hasn't slept yet. As a little wife, how can I sleep first? We don't have such a rule in our family," Gong Yimo said as if it was true. Gong Dai closed his eyes. When that excessively exquisite face closed his eyes, the impact was reduced, and there was actually some gentleness. "Then, little wife, do you have to listen to your husband?" Gong Yimo smiled mischievously. "That depends on what it is. If you ask me to sleep, I won't do such a rebellious thing. However, if it's to share your burdens, such as helping you look at the accounts, I'm still very willing to listen to you." As she spoke, she wrapped her arms around his neck from behind and acted coquettishly. "If you miss this opportunity, you won't get another one. It's rare that I'm willing to look at the accounts," Gong Dai smiled gently. "You're really not going to sleep?" "I'm not tired." Gong Dai opened his eyes and pulled her to his side, then carried her to his lap. "Sleep. As long as you're with me, I'm fine. With you by my side, I'm not tired at all." Gong Yimo found a comfortable position in his arms. "How about this? You look at the accounts, and I'll look at the accounts. Anyway, Bai Sheng has already screened them. It's not tiring to look at them." In fact, accounting was something that Wang Fei should do, but Gong Dai didn't want her to work hard, so he did everything by himself. Seeing that Gong Yimo was so sincere, Gong Dai gently kissed her forehead. "Then I'll have to trouble you, my wife." Gong Yimo hugged his neck and kissed him back unabashedly. "It's no trouble at all. I only do it occasionally anyway." Gong Dai smiled and picked up a thin booklet for her. Then, he hugged her and read the booklets. Because the things that were given to him were all important matters, Gong Dai also needed to consider some problems. Every time he was thinking, he would see the little thing in his arms obediently look at the accounts. She frowned because this thing was very boring, but she looked at it very slowly. She was the kind of little lazy bug that had to do it well. Seeing her like this, Gong Dai felt his thoughts become even more stagnant. No wonder people said that the land of warmth was the hero's mound. Because she was in his arms, he only wanted to empty his mind and enjoy her body temperature. The years were peaceful, perhaps it was like this. Seeing Gong Dai stare at her, Gong Yimo finally looked up. If you don't work faster, you'll have to sleep very late again. Gong Ju simply put down his pen and rubbed it against her neck. Hugging you, I don't want to do anything else. His warm body was close, and there was a nice fragrance. Gong Yimo was hugged tightly by him and only felt very warm. Then what do you want to do? Gong Dai's voice was a little annoyed. Do some things that are not convenient for you to do now, Gong Yimo smiled proudly. When there were only the two of them, Gong Dai would also act coquettishly. Others might not be able to imagine him acting coquettishly, but Gong Yimo felt that it was very cute and her heart was filled with sweetness. Just bear with it, there are still 5 more months. A large hand covered her stomach. Gong Dai sighed faintly. It took me 12 years to marry you, and we've only been intimate 5 times, but we still have to wait for 5 more months. One look and I can tell that this child won't dote on his father. Gong Yimo was melted by his slightly resentful handsome face. She hugged him and kissed him fiercely. He doesn't dote on you, but I dote on you. After giving birth to him, we won't have any more children. How about that? Gong Dai frowned. But I want a daughter like royal sister. Gong Yimo frowned with some embarrassment. Then you'll have to endure for another year. Gong Dai struggled for a while, and finally said, then I don't want it. Gong Yimo laughed. Gong Xiaoju, does your mother know that you're so cute? Gong Dai blinked, and even gave her an illusion of purity. It's good that you know, royal sister. She didn't know why, but every time he called her Sister Gong, Gong Emo would feel a tingling sensation. It was as if those 2 words had been whispered thousands of times by him. Gently, there was a different kind of lingering feeling. In the candlelight, Gong Emo blushed slightly. Gong Ju hugged her belly and said, don't worry. I have to raise him quickly. And then let him take over my duties. What about you? I'll take you out to play. Gong Yimo smiled sweetly. What if it's a daughter? Gong Dai shook his head. Since he doesn't love his father, it must be a son. I have a hunch. But what if it's a daughter? Gong Dai was embarrassed. His cold eyebrows became lively as he looked at Gong Yimo with a thorny expression. Then I'll have to work hard for a few more years. Gong Yimo was not satisfied. If it's a daughter, will you love her or me? It must be you. What if the daughter is jealous? Gong Dai held her hand tightly. Give birth to a son for her to play with. Gong Yimo was satisfied. Husband, you're so good, do you regret it? Gong Dai suddenly asked. Although his voice was still cold, it gave a soft feeling. Gong Yimo blinked and looked at his handsome face. Regret what? Gong Dai lowered his head and nibbled on her lips. Regret that you didn't marry me earlier. Gong Yimo was slightly stunned. After being kissed by Gong Dai, she still blinked and looked at him foolishly. Gong Dai couldn't help but laugh. The candlelight made his facial features look even gentler. His smile was like a snow lotus suddenly blooming on the heavenly mountain, with a kind of unexpected beauty. Think about it. If you married me after discovering my feelings, children would be running around now. Gong Yimo glared at him. You married me just to have children. Gong Dai raised his eyebrows slightly. Silly, I said that we could have slept on the same bed long ago. Gong Yimo suddenly exclaimed, because Gong Dai carried her. Stop fooling around. Let's sleep together. Chapter 7:18. The next day, everyone was there for Shuesei's blood. Si Wuyan found that after Shuesei died, the blood also died. It was useless. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Gong Yimo pulled Shuel Yen aside and told her what happened in the cave. After learning that the person who violated her was beaten into the water by Gong Dai, Shuel Yen looked conflicted. But she did not say anything. She only said that it would be good if he died. Then, when she heard that Shuesei's blood could suppress the goo poison, Shuel Yen's expression became even more complicated. If Shuesei's blood could suppress the goo poison, so could hers. Gong Yimo said, if possible, I hope you can give some of your blood to Si Wuyan for research. If the antidote for the goo poison is developed, they will not be able to use the goo poison to harm people. Just like this time, although the remaining Shui clan members hiding in Yuheng were uprooted, they still had the holy stone in their hands. They could continue to do evil. The research for the antidote was urgent. Shuel Yen heard and said after a while, I'm aware. My blood can cure the poison in your body. Gong Yimo was slightly stunned. She was clearly talking about other people, but she did not expect Shuel Yen to think of her first. Without waiting for Gong Yimo to say anything, Shuel Yen said anxiously, if it can save you, no matter how much blood it takes, it is okay. Gong Yimo was touched, there is no need for too much. I just want him to study it. Besides, your blood can only suppress my goo poison. It is not the antidote. Shuel Yen suddenly said, then, can my blood completely cure you? Gong Yimo frowned, what nonsense are you talking about? Isn't there an antidote? Even if there is no antidote, I will not hurt you. Shuel Yen wanted to say something, but Gong Yimo waved her hand and stopped her, this is a serious matter. You must not say anything. If you say anything, those crazy people will definitely have ideas about you. They will not want the antidote to appear. Shuel Yen nodded. What happened next was much smoother. Si Wuyan took some of her blood and did not ask any questions. Kim Yoon walked to the side and said to Gong Yimo. Now that the Yuheng rebellion has been quelled, there are still enemies lurking in the dark. Because of this, I can't eat or sleep in peace. I'm afraid that the same thing will happen again. What crimes did the people commit? Gong Yimo smiled. Kim Yoon Gij, don't worry. The Snow clan's power in Yuheng for more than 10 years has been uprooted. They won't be able to cause trouble in Yuheng in a short time. As long as the mastermind is not eliminated, I will not be at ease. Gong Yimo pointed at herself. Don't you still have me? I will definitely defeat all those bad guys and return peace to the world. Although she was smiling, the determination in her expression was very reassuring. I have done so much to create the situation today. I will not let them destroy it wantonly. Kim Yoon Gij, you just have to remember what you promised me on the day of your coronation. Kim Yoon's exquisite eyes dimmed. Of course I remember. You said that you hoped that the 4 countries would be peaceful for 100 years and that there would be no wars. Seeing that the cinnabar mole on his face had dimmed, Gong Yimo raised her eyebrows. What? I said that you must be happy. You promised me in front of all the civil and military officials that you must be happy. At this point, she looked to the side. Gong Dai was talking to Si Wuyan. Feeling her gaze, he looked over and smiled. Gong Yimo also smiled back. Then she turned around and continued to speak to Kim Yoon. Some people are very lucky to meet the person who will accompany them for the rest of their lives and love them for the rest of their lives. However, some people are very bumpy and they need to meet a few more times. Kim Yoon Gij, I still have to say that I am very grateful that you like me. You are very good. However, I already have Gong Dai. Perhaps people will reincarnate many times and have different choices each time. However, in this life, I have chosen him and I will not change my mind. As for you, I hope that you can be happy and have a good partner. Kim Yoon pursed his lips. He wanted to say something but he felt powerless. Me too. What? His voice was too soft and Gong Yimo did not hear it clearly. However, Kim Yoon suddenly looked at her and said word by word. I said that I am the same as you. I am someone who will not change my mind once I have made my choice. At this point, he smiled bitterly. I chose you and you chose Gong Dai. The only thing I can do is to give you my blessings. Gong Yimo was stunned. At that moment, Kim Yoon's face became clearer in her mind. His face was exquisite and there was a gentleness that came from within. I give you my blessings because Gong Dai is a better choice than me. However, if there is really a reincarnation, I really hope that I can meet you earlier than him. I may not be as strong as him but I will love you as much as he does. At this point, he suddenly took a step forward and hugged Gong Yimo tightly. I know that you are leaving. Mor, I will miss you and give you my blessings. You don't have to feel guilty because you have given me enough. Kim Yoon Gij, Gong Yimo pursed her lips and suppressed her urge to persuade him. She only said, I give you my blessings too. Kim Yoon hugged Gong Yimo for a while and then let go. Even so, Gong Dai still managed to snatch her back. He glared at Kim Yoon and loosened his grip. He really felt that he was an eyesore. Kim Yoon smiled gently. Gong Dai, I will leave Mor to you. If you dare to let her down, as her brother, I will not let you off. He spoke in a natural and unrestrained manner as if he had completely let go. Gong Dai's expression became a little better, but his face was still cold and stiff. Mind your own business. Royal sister had him. How could there be a day when these irrelevant people would interfere? The next day, Kim Yoon personally sent them to the gates of the capital city. This time, he could finally calmly watch Gong Yimo leave. At the same time, Shuel Yen and Si Wuyen left with her. They had decided to go to Lu Yi because Lu Ye's holy land was very likely to be the last nest of the Snow clan. When Gong Yimo turned around, she saw Kim Yoon standing alone at the front. The black mass of guards and the gloomy sky were all gray and mute. Only he was wearing a golden crown and a yellow robe. His exquisite features and tall posture were like a specimen that would never fade, forever imprinted in her mind. Gong Ju pulled her gaze back with some displeasure. Royal sister, why did you help him in the first place? In the carriage, Gong Dai frowned slightly. Because he is good-looking. Gong Yimo pursed her lips and smiled. You also think he is good-looking? Gong Dai pursed his lips. Gong Yimo moved closer. Because there were only the two of them in the carriage, Gong Yimo lay in his arms without restraint and sighed softly. Because he had once betrayed the world for her. Because in 2 lifetimes, regardless of the circumstances, he had devoted himself to her. It was a pity that she was not the right person for him in both lifetimes. You don't need a reason to help someone. If you really ask, it is because I owe him. Since Gong Yimo said so, Gong Dai did not ask anymore. After so many ups and downs, Gong Dai finally understood a principle. As long as she was around, there were many things. Why would he need to get to the bottom of it? As the saying goes, it is rare to be confused. Chapter 719. 5 months had passed, and it was already very obvious. Gong Yimo hugged her stomach and sat outside the carriage with a frown on her face. Everyone was starting a fire and setting up camp. They would reach Lu Ye's Huaqing tomorrow. There were many tribes around, but they did not seek refuge. Although there was more food now, and the people of Luyi would not starve in winter, they would not be rich either. What's wrong? Gong Dai saw Gong Yimo frowning and walked over. At this time, everyone was busy with their own things. Gong Yimo had nothing to do, and Gong Dai had finished his own things. Gong Dai. I suddenly thought of a very serious problem. What? Gong Dai sat beside her and handed her a cup of hot water. It was just right for her to drink. Gong Dai looked cold, but he had always been a very meticulous person. Gong Yimo rested her head on his shoulder and drank the water in small sips. Gong Dai could not help but reach out and hug her when he saw her sad and depressed look. I'm going to put on weight soon. You're so good looking, I don't even match you when I walk beside you. Gong Dai ruffled her hair. Silly words. Although he said that, he laughed softly. Royal Sister had been using all kinds of methods to praise him for his good looks recently. She was afraid that he would have a knot in his heart about Kim Yoon, and she was afraid that he would be unhappy. His baby was also a person who was rough but also meticulous. Gong Yimo saw Gong Dai smile. Since she had achieved her goal, she did not act dumb. We should reach Watching tomorrow. I hope that we can settle things quickly and go back. It's best if we can get back before we have children. Gong Dai nodded. Dayu State was their home. He did not think so in the past, but now, Gong Dai felt very close to that country. Because of her, he had a home. Si Wuyen walked over. He was a little tired, but more than that, he was proud. I know what stimulated the venomous worms in those brains. He had brought many medicines from Yuchi. Recently, he had been investigating them to find out what had prevented him from being intercepted. After experimenting with many medicines, he finally found the root of the problem. Gong Yimo looked at the small ball in his hand and was pleasantly surprised. Could it be this? What is this? Si Wuyen said, this is made from the seeds of dandelion grass. I know what kind of venomous worms that can parasitize a person's head. It's disgusted. It's just that I don't know how they made it so big. What's interesting is that this kind of venomous worms, but they are very afraid of the seeds. Gong Emo leaned closer and sniffed. There doesn't seem to be any smell. Si Wuyen passed the small ball to her. Humans can't smell it, but insects can. Although the seeds of the dandelion grass have no smell, the smell of its flowers and leaves is very strong. Gong Yimo smiled. That's good. Make more of these balls. We'll take one each and see what they can do. Si Wuyen nodded. This is not difficult. Give me some time and I'll be able to solve it. Gong Ju, on the other hand, was concerned about another matter. Do you have any idea about venomous worms? Speaking of this, Si Wuyen could not help but turn to look at Shuel Yen. She was boiling soup. The cold wind was blowing, but she looked very calm. The raw materials of venomous worms are venomous worms and holy stones. Holy stones do not belong to this world. Everything in this world has a mutual counteraction. It's not suitable for venomous worms. Si Wuyen's words hit the nail on the head. He frowned and looked very troubled. Moreover, holy stones are not considered venomous. But they have the effect of changing the human body. The effects it derived later were all concocted by adding various venomous worms. So strictly speaking, venomous worms cannot be cured. A gust of cold wind blew. Gong Dai hugged Gong Yimo, who was in a daze, and said with a frown. Then what's the matter with Shuel Yen? Si Wuyen's red robe was blown up by the cold wind. His voice was serious, without any of his usual teasing. The antidote that Shuel Yen took did not completely cure the venomous worms. For example, she is injured now. Her wounds will heal quickly and she is immune to all poisons. The accumulation of poison will only make her go into hibernation at most. From this, we can see that she did not cure the venomous worms. She only took a kind of medicine to get rid of the venomous worm's side effects, such as madness and the damage to her willpower. This medicine is extremely complicated. Gong Yimo blinked. In other words, other than finding the third antidote, there is no cure for the venomous worms. If the third antidote is found, can you replicate it? After all, she was not the only one who was poisoned. Many others were poisoned. Si Wuyen touched his chin. Although I can't say that I can replicate it, it shouldn't be a big problem. But let's not talk about others. If it's just treating you, it's not like there are no other ways. Gong Yimo's eyes widened. You're not allowed to have any ideas about my mother. Si Wuyen saw that she was so protective and glanced at her. All right, then pretend I didn't say anything. Gong Dai pursed his lips. He looked at Gong Yimo and then at Shuai Lian. If only he had arrived earlier and caught Shuai Lian. The poison in the royal sister's body was ultimately a scourge. The sky gradually darkened. Everyone rested by the bonfire and chatted. The wind gradually died down. In the vast grassland, their bonfire was like a grain of sand in the vast ocean. Gong Yimo had fallen asleep on Gong Dai's lap. Recently, Gong Yimo had become very sleepy. Gong Dai was becoming more and more skilled in taking care of people. He pulled up the felt covering Gong Yimo's body. Suddenly, he paused. Someone's coming. Gong Dai's words woke everyone up. Gong Dai heard the commotion. There were quite a number of people coming. Gong Yimo rubbed her eyes. The sound was getting closer. She also heard it. There was a group of people galloping over on horseback. But she was not worried. Although the other party had a lot of people, they might not be a match for them. Soon, a group of people came from afar. There were about 2,000 to 3,000 of them. They held torches in their hands. It was like a fire dragon attacking, illuminating the horizon. The sound of horse hooves was hurried and the ground was shaking. Gong Yimo looked up. Her chest seemed to be shaking. The figure of the leader gradually became clear. He was tall and powerful, with an imposing appearance. Sitting on horseback, he gave off a feeling of superiority. Gong Yimo. How have you been? A strong male voice was heard. Gong Yimo immediately recognized who he was. Longqing Wuji. He actually came to pick her up in the middle of the night. Gong Dai's cold face sank. The surrounding cold wind that had stopped seemed to wreak havoc again. Everyone shivered. They lamented in their hearts that it was not easy for the regent. Wherever he went, there would be his love rival. The group was getting closer and closer. When they got closer, Longqing Wuji slowed down. Finally, he stepped in front of Gong Yimo and looked down at her from above. In the bonfire, Gong Yimo saw Longqing Wuji's handsome face again. She was dazed. She thought it was the time when they were drinking and chatting. Gong Yimo. His slightly curly black hair fell down. He grinned. We meet again. Chapter 720. The way he made his entrance was really surprising. That aura of total annihilation almost forced the darkness back. At this time, Gong Dai waved his hand and a gust of wind startled Longqing Wuji's horse. He hurriedly tried to control his horse. After stabilizing it with great difficulty, that imposing aura had almost collapsed. He couldn't help glaring at Gong Dai. Prince Regent, what do you mean by this? Gong Dai pulled Gong Yimo into his arms. Royal sister is pregnant with this prince's child. It's too dangerous for you to ride near. Gong Dai was cold, but he emphasized the words, this prince's child. Longqing Wuji was stunned. He subconsciously looked at Gong Yimo's stomach and his handsome face became complicated. Gong Yimo, you already have a child. Gong Yimo felt the pressure in the air and felt a little helpless. Why couldn't these men get along better? They were clearly in a cooperative relationship. That's right, I already have a child. Longqing Wuji raised his eyebrows, but didn't you fail to get married? This sentence made Gong Dai's hand on Gong Yimo's waist tighten. He decided that when he returned, he would immediately, hold another wedding. Moreover, he wanted the entire world to know about Gong Yimo. Marry him, Gong Dai. Gong Yimo saw the man beside her freeze and the people behind her were trembling. In order to make her life easier, she said righteously. Although I didn't get married, I already won't marry anyone other than Gong Dai. So to have a child in advance. I'm willing. Longqing Wuji's face darkened, but he thought of something and didn't continue. He just said in a muffled voice. Forget it, this isn't the place to talk. This prince guessed that you would arrive soon, so I came to pick you up. The people behind Longqing Wuji all had black lines on their faces. He clearly only wanted to pick up the princess. Longqing Wuji raised his eyebrows and looked around. Since you're pregnant, how can you sleep in the open? You'll have to work harder at night. You'll have to go to my royal city tonight. Now, that place will definitely shock you. Gong Yimo glanced at Gong Dai. Since the other party had come to invite them in the middle of the night, she should give them some face. In the end, Gong Dai still cared about the royal sister's health and finally nodded. He nodded, and everyone began to break camp. Longqing Wuji jumped off his horse and walked to Gong Yimo's side, feeling a little depressed. How did you get pregnant so quickly? His eyes were filled with pity. Although he had promised Gong Dai that he would give up on Gong Yimo, he didn't expect Gong Dai to act so quickly. This made him feel bad, and he sighed in his heart. Before Gong Yimo could say anything, Gong Dai's face had already darkened. In the future, he would never bring royal sister to Lu Yi again. At this time, feeling the threat, Longqing Wuji glanced at Gong Dai. The two of them were equally tall, staring at each other by the fire. They both had their own auras, and neither was willing to back down. Don't be so guarded. This prince doesn't have any other intentions. Although this prince misses Gong Yimo, this prince won't go back on his promise. His open and honest attitude won Gong Ju's favor. Gong Ju's face cleared up a little, but his expression remained cold. Then you should be careful with your words. Daiyu State is different from Lu Yi. There are some things that shouldn't be said. Gong Dai's cold words made Longqing Wuji unhappy. If you like her, then you like her. Why do you have to hide it? This prince wants to say it. If Gong Yimo doesn't like you, even if she's pregnant, this prince is willing to welcome her. Gong Dai expressed that he wanted to kill people not because he had a bad temper, but because there were always people looking for death. Wait. Calm down. Gong Yimo saw that the situation wasn't right, so she quickly stood between the two of them. It's already packed. Shouldn't we be leaving? Hearing Gong Yimo's words, the two of them looked at each other, then looked away. The army returned to the camp, and the formation was astonishing. Si Wuyan sat on the horse and asked curiously, King Lu Yi, why did you bring so many people? Longqing Wuji's eyes darkened. Recently, the grasslands haven't been peaceful, especially near the capital. This prince personally came to welcome you to ensure that nothing goes wrong. Si Wuyan felt bad. According to what you said, could it be that Lu Yi is also in turmoil? Suddenly, Gong Dai walked out of the carriage and looked into the distance with an unfriendly expression. Longqing Wuji's horse was uneasy, but he laughed and pulled out his sword. Under the light of the torch, he revealed a set of white teeth and smiled cruelly. It can't be considered as turmoil, but it might be a blessing from the eagle god. Since winter, there will be wild beasts eating from time to time. Si Wuyan saw that he suddenly pulled out his sword, so he urged his horse to retreat a few steps. At this time, Gong Yimo waved at him, "Si Wuyan, you also come to the carriage." But Shuai Lian had already gone in. Si Wuyan knew that he didn't know martial arts, so this wasn't the time to be brave, so he got off his horse and entered the carriage. His body still carried the chill of the winter night, so once he entered, he warmed himself up by the brazier. This soft cushion and smokeless silver charcoal, one couldn't help but say that Gong Dai was so devoted to Gong Yimo that it made one's hair stand up. What's going on? Si Wuyan sat near the door of the carriage and lifted the curtain to look outside. He saw that it was pitch black outside, so why did Gong Dai go out? Gong Yimo squinted her eyes. There's a large group of animals approaching. If I'm not wrong, it's very likely to be wolves. Si Wuyan still didn't understand. If it's a pack of wolves, is there a need to be so nervous? King Lu Yi brought 3,000 men. Gong Yimo shook her head. It's not an ordinary wolf. It's as if they have intelligence. They actually came from different directions to surround us. And their movements are very fast. Following Gong Yimo's words, there was a blood-curdling scream. Shuai Lian's body instantly tensed up. Will there be any problem? Why are there so many monsters? Gong Yimo was unable to answer her, but it was Si Wuyan who couldn't help but sigh. A huge rock that fell from the sky, bringing countless possibilities. Now it seems that not only did those people turn people into neither humans nor ghosts, now even animals are not spared. When Shuai Lian heard this, she couldn't help but feel sad. At the very beginning, it was to develop the elixir of immortality. Although my father is cruel, but he has never experimented on anyone other than me. Gong Yimo comforted her. This matter isn't your fault. If we really want to talk about it, if the holy stone is used in the right way, there will be many benefits. But human nature is greedy, and there will always be people who don't walk the right path. Mother, you don't need to blame yourself for this. Shuai Lian nodded. Speaking of which, this could be considered as a joke played by the heavens. If the holy stone had not fallen in Snow Country, nothing would have happened. But the holy stone had indeed fallen in Snow Country, and Snow Country was a country that worshipped the witchcraft evil god. Moreover, it could have different reactions with different goo worms. Who knew what new tricks the other party had developed during this period of time? Chapter 721. The sounds of killing outside became louder and louder. Gong Yimo and the other two sat in the carriage as if they were caught in a whirlpool. Peace and danger were only separated by a wooden plank. Finally, when a person was attacked by a wolf and the back of his head hit the carriage, Gong Yimo suddenly pulled out her sword. Si Wuyan, take care of my mother. I will go out and take a look. Before Si Wuyan could say anything, Gong Yimo had already gone out and chopped off the wolf's head, saving the person who hit the carriage. Thank you, princess. Gong Yimo nodded and joined the battle. Longqing Wuji loudly reminded everyone. There is poison on the wolf's claws. Once it sees blood, it will be unconscious for a few hours. All the injured people gather in the middle of the group. When Gong Yimo heard, she saw the young man who she had just saved holding his hand. It was obvious that his hand was injured. Can you still walk? Go to the middle of the group. The other party nodded. Si Wuyan also heard the sound and quickly ordered the coachman to go to the middle of the group. A few thousand people formed a circle and were prepared to face the sneak attack from the dark. Those wolves seemed to have intelligence. After a round of attack, they stopped. Gong Dai realized that these wolves were very fast and were not afraid of fire. They cooperated very well, and in the dark, it was not easy to deal with them. What is going on with these wolves? When did they appear? Gong Dai walked behind Longqing Wuji and asked coldly. At this moment, Longqing Wuji's eyes were fixed on the dark, not missing any threat. These bastards only appeared in the past 10 days. Luckily, although they are powerful, this king's warriors are not to be trifled with. Although many are injured, the death rate is not high. Gong Dai was curious, then what about those who are injured? Longqing Wuji looked at him strangely. Those who have recovered will continue to fight and guard against these bastards. Those who are seriously injured are still recuperating in the royal city. Gong Dai frowned. Just as he was about to say something, Gong Yimo walked over. Didn't you check the poison on their claws? Royal sister. Gong Yun's brows furrowed even tighter. It's fine here. Go back and rest. Even Longqing Wuji said, since you're pregnant, just stay put. This is a man's business, you don't have to worry about it. Gong Yimo raised her eyebrows in displeasure. What's wrong? Back when I was in Luyi, you also worried a lot. Was I not a woman in the past? Longqing Wuji paused, but at this time, he couldn't argue with Gong Yimo, so he could only explain. You know, Luyi has very few doctors. Gong Yimo pursed her lips. She had almost forgotten that these men from the grasslands would usually fight it out when they got sick. They would only go to a doctor if they really couldn't take it anymore. Apparently, they had discovered that the poison on the wolf's claws would cause people to fall asleep, but there were no side effects after falling asleep, so they didn't bother about it anymore. Then are there any suspicious people in Luyi recently? Longqing Wuji glanced at Gong Dai. I received a letter from the regent. This king sent a large army to surround the city every day, but didn't let anyone in. Not only did his words not make Gong Yimo feel relieved, but she also frowned slightly. Perhaps it was because Longqing Wuji's defense was too tight that those people changed their tactics. Gong Ju also seemed to think of something. He turned to Longqing Wuji and said, this prince thinks that those who are recuperating in the palace are very dangerous. You'd better send people out of the city first and evacuate those who are injured. How can that be? Longqing Wuji frowned. These people are all warriors who were injured in order to protect Luyi. If they move out, where can they move to in this cold weather? And what's wrong with them? Gong Yimo wanted to explain, but the wolf pack started the second round of ambush. Gong Dai, don't you think that they are purposely delaying our footsteps? Gong Dai nodded. Now it seemed that something had happened in the capital. Longqing Wuji was afraid that they would be attacked on the road, so he brought people to welcome them. Little did he know that the other party might be waiting for him to leave. Although the wolves were fast and aggressive, they were not a match for everyone. But if they stopped fighting, wouldn't they be unable to hurry on their way? Gong Yimo touched the stone heart on her neck. When she was fighting side by side with Gong Dai, the two of them calmly discussed. Longqing Wuji values relationships. If he goes back, I'm afraid that he won't be able to handle this matter well. It's better to stay and completely destroy the wolf pack. Right now, only you and I have the highest martial arts. Do you choose to stay here, or do you choose to go to the capital first? Hearing Gong Yimo's words, Gong Dai hesitated for a moment. I'll go to the capital with you. Gong Yimo shook her head. I don't feel at ease with Mother here. That scarred face from last time was confirmed to be Mother's brother. I always thought that he was the mastermind. He took your palm and should be dead. But what if he didn't die? Gong Yimo felt uneasy. If he didn't die, he must have heard Snow's words when he ambushed me. He knew that after taking the antidote, his blood would be different. Then tonight, it might be another trick by the other party to lure us away. Between the two of us, only one can go. Gong Dai also understood Gong Yimo's concerns. Tonight's turmoil, was it because the capital was in danger and wanted to delay their footsteps, or was it a diversion to lure them away and capture Shulian? The other party's motive was not easy to guess. But in comparison, going to the capital was relatively safer. After all, it was just a guess. Those injured soldiers might not be in danger. Gong Dai found it hard to choose. He even thought that whether the capital was in danger or not, as long as his royal sister was fine, why bother? But he knew that Gong Yimo would not allow the other party's scheme to succeed. Knowing that Gong Dai was concerned about her, Gong Yimo said softly as she killed the wolves. I'll go to the capital. I'll get some blood from mother and bring the pills that Si Wuyen gave me. Nothing will happen. If there's nothing else, I'll wait for you in the capital. Gong Dai pursed his lips. With a wave of his hand, he killed more than a dozen wolves. He was angry and kept fighting with Gong Yimo, killing more than 100 wolves. The wolves retreated, but Gong Dai's face darkened and he did not speak. Gong Yimo took the initiative to kiss him. All right, I know you want to protect me. But you forgot that when we were young, I was the one who called the shots. If I really become your canary, what if you don't like me anymore? Gong Dai helplessly pinched her face. No matter what, I love you. Gong Yimo smiled sweetly. Then let's work together as husband and wife. The sooner we settle this, the sooner we can go home. After a while, Gong Dai nodded helplessly. Be careful. At this moment, Longqingguoji walked over curiously. Gong Yimo quickly told him about her worries. Although it was just a precautionary measure, they could not rule out the possibility of someone causing trouble in the capital. Longqingguoji thought for a while and gave her the life token on his neck. Gong Yimo's life token was still hanging on it. This made Gong Yimo stunned. The army will be here soon. If there's anything, don't force yourself. He only had one thought at this moment, and that was to kill all the wolves tonight. To prevent future troubles. Chapter 722. When Gong Yimo asked Shuai Lian for blood, Shuai Lian was shocked, thinking that Gong Yimo was going to do something dangerous. When she found out that Gong Dai stayed behind because Immerse wanted him to protect her, she quickly said, there are so many people here. With King Lu Yi here, I'll be fine. Gong Yimo shook her head, it's better to be safe than sorry. If that bad guy doesn't die, you'll be in danger. Also, I'm just leaving first. Nothing bad will happen to King City. Don't worry. Shuai Lian still felt that it was inappropriate, but Gong Yimo was a very independent person. She wanted to give Gong Yimo more blood, but Gong Yimo refused, only saying that it was enough. After Gong Yimo left, Longqingguoji and Gong Dai discussed a plan to kill all the wolves here to prevent future trouble. There were many wolves and they moved quickly, but they were no match for Gong Dai's martial arts. When the two of them fought together, the wolves were scared and instinctively started to run away. But at this time, a few soldiers in the middle suddenly woke up from their sleep. When they woke up, their eyes turned red. Before anyone could react, they had already killed several people. Gong Ju frowned. They had the pills given to them by Si Wuyen, so the manipulator shouldn't be nearby. These people weren't being controlled, they were simply going crazy. Gong Ju ordered Longqingguoji to chase after the wolves, while he controlled the crazed soldiers. At this time, Si Wuyen came down and examined the bodies of the soldiers. It can't be wrong. The other party smeared the goo poison on the wolves' claws. At first, it was just a little bit, but after being scratched repeatedly, the poison will settle down and they will be completely infected with the goo poison. Gong Dai's expression was serious. Then isn't Royal Sister in danger? He hurriedly got up. Royal Sister should not have gone far, he could still catch up to her. Shuai Lian also said from the side, goo poison is so scary. Your Highness, you should go with Immerse. But Si Wuyen frowned and sternly said. Gong Dai, I know that in your eyes, other than Gong Yimou, nothing else is important. However, Shuolian is here. If the other party really wants to capture her, King Lu Yi and the others won't be able to stop them. Gong Dai frowned. Ever since they were young, he and the royal sister had different intentions. It was as if he didn't care about Shuolian's life at all. Si Wuyan whispered. You and Gong Yimou are husband and wife, and you grew up together. You know her ability. Why are you so worried? At this moment, Gong Dai suddenly thought of what the royal sister said, husband and wife are of the same mind. Husband and wife, doesn't that mean he should protect her? In the winter night, Longqing Wuji brought people to kill the remaining wolves. Only the people brought by Gong Dai and some injured people stayed here. After a chaotic battle, the smell of blood spread in the air. Gong Dai was silent, as if he was caught in some kind of difficult problem. Si Wuyan said as he bandaged the wounds of those who were injured. Gong Yimou is a person who cares about her country, but you are different. You only have her in your heart. But when your beliefs collide with hers, are you willing to fulfill her, or are you willing to stick to yourself and make her obey you? This was the first time someone had said such words to Gong Ju. Country, what does these things have to do with him? But, what if these are things that the royal sister cares about? Between him and the royal sister, will he be assimilated by the royal sister, or will the royal sister yield to his will? The answer is self-evident. But Shuolian was a little nervous. In her opinion, her daughter blindly letting a person who loves her accommodate her is not a wise thing to do. But she also secretly hoped that Gong Dai was different. He was different from most of the men in this era who respected their wives but were very egotistical at the crucial moment. But will he be different? Gong Dai, he has the strongest military force, sits on the strongest country, has money, power, and is very young. This kind of person is already far better than those men. Then, will he allow a woman to go against him again and again, make him obedient, and retreat step by step? Gong Dai took a deep breath. This king understands. In the firelight, his silver-gray hair set off his beautiful yet cold face. Especially when his black jade-like eyes look at her, Shuolian couldn't help but tremble. Country, faith, and will. If all of these are what the royal sister wants, then this king also wants them. After saying this, he looked at the horizon and let his impetuous heart gradually sink. His royal sister has never disappointed him. Besides supporting her, loving her, and believing in her, what else can he do? Who told him to love her to the bone? Gong Yimou naturally didn't know what was happening here. Her thoughts were very simple, and that was to quickly solve this matter and stop this kind of busy life. Gong Dai didn't like her to worry about everything, so when the time comes, she can be at ease and be a silly girl. Gong Dai didn't like her to stick her head out for everything, so when the time comes, she can be at ease and be a canary behind him. However, all of this was built after the dust had settled. She knew that sometimes she was too forceful, so Gong Dai could only listen and endure time and time again. But she swore that after everything was settled, she was willing to become what he wanted. She didn't care about the world and only wanted to be a delicate wife. Gong Yimou smiled slightly. Under the full speed of her qigong, she arrived at a day's journey in 4 hours. Looking at the majestic city gate in front of her, Gong Yimou secretly nodded. No wonder Longqing Wuji said that King City would shock her. It was indeed much wider and taller. It already had the domineering aura of a country's capital. And what made her feel gratified was that King City was very quiet at this time, and there were no big fights. It seemed that she was overthinking. She quietly sneaked in. And from the palace, there were bursts of crying. The mother and daughter cried together. The old consort looked at the little girl in front of her and cried. Your royal brother is too cruel. He actually didn't allow you to return home. You suffered outside, and you've lost weight. And in front of the old consort was Enchanting Shui. No one understood the light that flashed through her eyes. She cried while looking at the old consort in front of her. This old woman kept saying that she doted on her, but when her royal brother used their glory and wealth to force her, her good parents didn't say a word, for fear of angering her royal brother. This kinship was really cheap. Since that was the case, what else did she have to worry about? Others treated her with false affection, so she could only rely on herself. She would take back everything she wanted. Mother. You don't know, the husband that my royal brother found for me, he is not a man at all. No, it should be said that he likes men and has never touched your daughter. The old consort's eyes darkened. Then aren't you a living widow? Chapter 723. Enchanting Shui cried even harder. That's right, mother. Those two men were shameless and even beat me up. I had no choice but to run back. But previously, Brother Wang guarded the imperial city so strictly that no one was allowed to enter. I don't even know how I managed to survive these past 10 days. The old consort wiped her tears and said seriously, this time, you're already in. Can he still chase you out? That's not necessarily true. Enchanting Shui said aggrievedly, I heard people outside say that royal brother went to pick up Gong Yimo. That bitch wants me dead. Furthermore, Brother Wang is so smitten by her that he might really kill me for her. Hearing that Gong Yimo was here, the old consort trembled. Then what should we do? Enchanting Shui stammered, let's not talk about me. Mother, how are you doing in the imperial city? The old consort sighed. Not good. Your father is obsessed with the newbie and your brother doesn't care about me. I look forward to reuniting with you every day, but it's so difficult to see you. Hearing that, Enchanting Shui cried even louder. It's all because of our hard life as women. If it's me who ascends the throne, I won't bear to see mother suffer so much. The old consort was shocked. How can a woman be queen? Why can't a woman? Enchanting Shui's voice was faint, making the old consort's heart turn cold. Mother, if anything happens to brother and he doesn't have any children, I'll be the only one left. When I become queen, I promise father won't neglect you anymore. Chang's Wuji was the old consort's child, so she was a little hesitant. Enchanting Shui took out a packet of powder and said at the right time. Mother, as long as brother drinks this, he'll fall into a deep sleep. When I become queen, I'll wake him up. He'll be fine. The old consort was still in a difficult position, but Enchanting Shui was already crying. Mother, royal brother is on guard against me now. I don't even have a chance to get close to him. Mother, if you don't help me and I'm sent back, those two disgusting men will kill me. The old princess consort's heart softened again when she saw Enchanting Shui crying. For some reason, she actually took the packet of powder. Enchanting Shui smiled through her tears, then I'll stay here with mother from now on. If Brother Wang comes back and wants to drive me away, mother must protect me. With that, she ran away with a smile, not giving the old princess a chance to regret. Gong Yimo was speechless. This Ting Shui of Chang's ambition was not small. She actually wanted to be Lu Ye's queen. And if she became the queen, would she treat the old princess well? Gong Yimo didn't miss her last gloomy smile. She was afraid that the old Wang Fei still didn't know that she had worked so hard to let someone in behind her son's back. Gong Yimo followed Enchanting Shui to her place. How's it going over there? Caught. At this time, Enchanting Shui's voice was cold, without the slightest bit of grievance. One of her subordinates said respectfully, the situation over there is still unclear. A bunch of trash. You have to be so cautious to catch a woman. Long Chang's Ting Shua curled her lips into a smile. Forget it, now go use the goo poison to bring in more people. When Brother Wang comes back, I'll catch him off guard. Gong Yimo's pupils shrank when she heard the word goo poison. It seemed that Long Chang's Ting Shua sneaked in this time and brought a lot of goo poison. She didn't expect that she would mix with the remnants of the Shua clan. So, the person she wanted to catch was Shuelian. Her subordinates followed the order and Gong Yimo hurriedly followed. She couldn't let Long Chang's Ting Shua succeed, so she had to make the first move. After Gong Yimo went out, she directly knocked that person out. She snatched the packet of medicine from his hand. Since she had nothing to do, Gong Yimo ran back to see if she could hear any more news. In the end, she ran back and found that Long Chang's Ting Shua and another guard she brought were rolling together. The scene was extremely erotic. Gong Yimo decided not to look. She was pregnant. What would she do if she got a needle eye? At this time, they seemed to have enjoyed themselves to their heart's content. Long Chang's Ting Shua said with satisfaction, "My dead husband really has eyes but can't see. He's indifferent to a great beauty like me and likes a man instead." That guard said fawningly, "Weren't they both killed by you? I'm sure they must be regretting going against you." Gong Yimo was shocked. She didn't expect that after not seeing each other for more than a year, Long Chang's Ting Shua had become so powerful. She actually killed those two people and ran back. That guard said with some confusion, "Now you're the queen of our small country. Why do you still come to Luyi to take the risk?" He was very confused because he didn't understand Long Chang's expanding ambition. "Queen. My place is considered a country." Long Chang's Ting Shua sneered, "Only a big country like Luyi can be considered a country. I'm Lu Ye's princess. Why should I hide in that small place? Long Chang's Wuji owes me, my good parents owe me. I want to get them back one by one. When the goo poison spreads, when I have enough puppets in my hands, I want Long Chang's Wuji to die in front of his subjects. I also want my good parents to enjoy life and become the lowest horse servants." Gong Yimo was speechless. The old Wang Fei and the old King Lu Yi didn't do anything wrong to Long Chang's Ting Shua. But when Long Chang's Ting Shua's mind was twisted, she didn't even let her own parents off. There's also Gong Yimo. Gong Yimo could hear the sound of her gnashing her teeth on the roof. "I want Gong Yimo to become a prostitute for Lu Ye's lowest horse grooms. Those people are used to being beaten and scolded. They love to torment women in bed. Let Gong Yimo enjoy it. As for her man, I'll take over." Hearing this, Gong Yimo didn't want to listen anymore. This woman was completely twisted by hatred. First, she didn't have a goo in her body. Second, she wasn't controlled by anyone, but she was still willing to work for the other party. It was obvious that there was a deal. Gong Yimo's eyes turned and suddenly had an idea. When Long Chang's Ting Shua found out that the person who poisoned her was gone and she couldn't poison again, she would definitely think of a way to contact the mastermind. At that time, wouldn't she be able to catch the mastermind? Below, the guard had already retreated. Gong Yimo was also preparing to leave, but she saw Long Chang's Ting Shua take out a jade bottle. A goo crawled out of it. She hesitated for a moment and grabbed the goo with her fingers. Gong Yimo's eyesight was very good. She recognized that this was the mother goo of the same heart goo. Long Chang's Ting Shua hesitated for a moment. She suddenly raised her head and swallowed the mother goo. At that moment, Gong Yimo's hair stood on end. She suddenly felt that this woman was terrifying. Long Chang's Ting Shua also didn't feel good. After she ate it, her face was as white as snow. But she looked at the child goo that was still sleeping in the bottle and smiled faintly. "Gong Dai, wait for me." Chapter 724. At that moment, Gong Yimo was stunned. A chill ran down her spine to her brain. She even had the urge to kill Long Qingting Shui. But when she thought that she needed her to find the mastermind, she swallowed her anger and turned to leave. Gong Dai's side was surrounded by people. Long Qingting Wuji led people to chase after the remaining wolves. A large group of women in white suddenly appeared. Each of them had a cold expression, as if they were emotionless puppets. Some of them were bulging and it was unknown what they were hiding. That evil energy made Gong Dai's side more than 100 people on guard. Gong Dai looked at them and narrowed his eyes slightly. The other party had come to his side. It could be seen that Royal Sister was temporarily safe. Thinking of this, he relaxed a lot. The woman in the lead did not talk nonsense. With a sharp whistle, someone took off the medicine bag tied to her body, lit the fuse and threw it over. Although Gong Ju didn't know what they threw at him, he was certain that it wasn't anything good. So Gong Dai directly used his inner strength to materialize and swept all the medicine bags together with a gust of wind. Then, before they were about to explode, they were all torn apart. The wind brought about by the materialization of inner strength was like a blade. The powder formed a circle around them and finally all rushed towards the other party. But it was obvious that the other party had taken the antidote. The powder only made them feel uncomfortable for a while before they raised their swords and rushed over. More than 10 people rushed towards Gong Dai at the same time. They cooperated very well. More than 10 people together should be able to reach the 6th level of wind and nature. Gong Dai was once again glad that Royal Sister had gone to King City. There would not be many people like the other party. With him here, Royal Sister would be safe. These people were very powerful, but they were still not enough to deal with Gong Dai. But at this moment, there was a neigh. The carriage that Shui Lian was in suddenly moved. The horse rushed forward like crazy. In the chaos, Gong Dai wanted to kill the horse with his sword, but suddenly a woman rushed out and blocked the sword for herself. Bang! Bang bang! At the same time, a series of explosions could be heard. It turned out that there were a few women who also had medicine bags tied to their bodies. They were fighting in close combat while igniting the fuses. However, the sound of the explosion was not as violent as the sound of gunfire. Instead, it was like the sound of fireworks. Powder exploded from their bodies. It spread to the crowd. Gong Dai flew to stop the carriage, ignoring these people. As the powder spread out, everyone fell to the ground. Si Wuyan was just about to move when he was held hostage by a woman with a sword. At this time, Gong Dai also jumped to the top of the carriage and killed the crazy horse with one slash. The carriage tilted forward involuntarily due to inertia and was about to overturn. Gong Dai stood at the top of the carriage and kicked backwards, causing his feet to sink. Due to the pressure, the four wheels bounced off at the same time, but the body of the car remained intact and pressed against the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. Shulian's soft cry came from inside the carriage, but she was obviously fine. On the other hand, Gong Dai waved his sword and stopped at the top of the carriage. He turned around and looked coldly at the remaining 100 or so people. A gust of wind blew past, and his robe fluttered, stirring up waves of killing intent. The leader of the group was heavily injured. She was extremely unwilling to accept this. She believed that the 12 of them had the strength to fight against Gong Dai. Furthermore, with the people and medicine she brought, they would not lose even against the 3,000 cavalrymen of Dragon City's Limitless. However, she had so many people and medicine. She had even ordered the wolves to disperse their forces. In the end, when faced with Gong Dai's 100 or so people, she could not even last a single round. The 100 or so people that had collapsed were nothing. What was terrifying was Gong Dai himself. If it wasn't for him rushing to stop the horses, all 12 of them would have been dead by now. It seemed like he did not use much strength when killing the wolves. Only when they attacked Shulian did he reveal his strength. And this strength made them feel like they were facing a mountain god. They had no way to retaliate. Don't move. Hand over Shulian. Otherwise, I will kill him. With Si Wuyan being held hostage, Gong Dai's cold face turned even gloomier. Now that the others had been drugged, the 1,000 elites he brought from Dai Yu State were still helping Yuhing. Gong Dai believed that he could kill all of them, but Si Wuyan gritted his teeth, don't worry about me. Shulian cannot fall into their hands. As soon as he said this, a bloody wound appeared on his neck. This made Gong Dai frown. He could not die. Otherwise, Royal Sister would be sad. How could he protect him and kill the others when he was being held hostage? Gong Dai took a deep breath and slowly closed his eyes. All this time, he knew that his foundation was unstable after forcefully breaking through to the 8th tier. Therefore, he rarely used his full strength, afraid of the backlash. But now, the ground suddenly trembled slightly. This sudden tremor caused the remaining 100 or so women to involuntarily gather together. They felt as if Mount Tai was pressing down on them. The danger was everywhere. Therefore, they did not know where to guard against. Gong Dai smiled gently. In the firelight, his face became more three-dimensional. One side was lit, and the other side was shadowed. Although his eyes were closed, it was as if he could see all their fear. What was going on? Where did this murderous aura come from? Could it be that Gong Dai still wanted to attack? Did he not care about the lives of the people in his hands? The leader of the women wanted to say something, but she felt a murderous aura coming from behind. When she turned around, a stone pierced through her forehead. Ah! Amidst the screams, Si Wuyan felt the blade on his neck loosen. Before he could react, screams rang out one after another. It was as if an invisible circle had surrounded them. There was no wind, but from the slight tremors, they could clearly feel that there was a wind raging. With people dying one after another, these women could not help but look at the man on the roof. At this moment, Gong Dai's silver-gray hair was dancing wildly. His hands were apart, palms facing each other. As his robe fluttered, he looked like a mad demon. However, under such movements, the carriage under him was isolated from the tremors. Shuo Lian felt as if she was trapped in a whirlpool. However, because she was in the eye of the storm, although she felt the pressure, she was in the safest place. In the next second, when the women did not know what to do, they saw the stones on the ground slowly floating up. So that was just the appetizer. Under such a terrifying pressure, some people finally reacted and wanted to escape. However, when they rushed out, they were forced back by the invisible wind. They were in the eye of the storm, like turtles in a jar. Some people were so flustered that they became even more daring. She shouted, "Stop! Or I'll kill him." As she spoke, she pounced towards Si Wuyan. Her movement seemed to have triggered some kind of switch. Si Wuyan's scalp went numb when she heard the sound of floating stones sinking into her flesh. It was the sound of the floating stones sinking into her flesh. Chapter 725. Then, he watched helplessly as the people who were pouncing at him suddenly froze in place. One by one, they fell to the ground with an unwilling look on their faces. There was not much blood left and they did not even have the time to make a sound before the stones came flying at them from all directions. They were extremely fast. They turned them into sieves. Si Wuyan stared with widened eyes as he circled around in a daze. More than 100 people reacted from time to time and collapsed to the ground. After he finished circling around, he was the only person left standing in the encirclement. This, was the strength of someone close to the transcendent realm. Si Wuyen swallowed a mouthful of saliva as he looked up at the man who was slowly opening his eyes. He was only 18 years old, but even Gong Yimo did not know what kind of monster she had raised. It was only because he had never truly indulged himself that everyone felt that he was strong, but they did not know how strong he was. Gong Dai slowly exhaled as his long hair no longer fluttered. Even the stones that were waiting to be shot fell to the ground. Shui Lian trembled as she climbed out of the carriage. As for Gong Dai, he jumped off the carriage roof. When he landed, his body swayed unnoticeably. "Are you all right?" Si Wuyen felt the murderous aura around him dissipate as the encirclement disappeared. He hurriedly went forward to take his pulse and realized that this attack had drained most of Gong Dai's inner strength. Gong Dai pulled back his hand and said coldly, "You should wake up the people on the ground. This king is fine." For some reason, Si Wuyen felt that he was very different from usual when he looked at him. Although he was cold and did not know what was good for him, and he was also arrogant, he did not make people hate him. Si Wuyen could not describe it because he did not know of a word called tsundere. With this doubt in mind, he obediently went to check on the people on the ground. When he realized that they were only temporarily unconscious, Si Wuyen heaved a sigh of relief. He took out some medicine and mixed it with water before giving it to them one by one. As for Gong Dai, he sat cross-legged on the ground as he adjusted his breathing. Shulian stood to the side. At this moment, she felt that she was very incompetent. She couldn't do anything well. Moreover, her son-in-law was really strong and gentle, just now, at that critical moment, because he promised his daughter that he would protect her. He immediately rushed over to kill Crazy Horse. After Crazy Horse died, the carriage tilted, and she almost fell over, but she felt a gentle force protecting her, preventing her from hitting the carriage head-on. In the next second, the carriage was pushed to the ground by him, and the wheels broke, but she didn't suffer much from the impact. She heard screams coming from outside, but after a while, those sounds completely disappeared under a terrifying pressure. She was inside and felt a suffocating pressure. What she felt even more was Gong Dai's gentleness and attentiveness under his power. Such a young, capable, responsible, and considerate man, her daughter had really picked up a treasure. Gong Yimo felt a little uncomfortable. Her chest felt stuffy, and she felt that something seemed to have happened to Gong Dai, but with Gong Dai there, it shouldn't be a problem. She came back with benefits. At least she stopped Long Qing Ting Shui's plot in time. When she thought that she was still thinking about Gong Dai, Gong Yimo felt very unhappy. Gong Dai was just a little more handsome and capable than others. Why was she still thinking about him? Angry, Gong Yimo decided that she must teach Long Qing Ting Shui a lesson. Long Qing Wu Ji came back and was shocked to see the ground full of corpses. They had completely destroyed the wolf's den. This time, many people came back with wolf corpses on their backs, but compared to the hundreds of white-clothed female corpses on the ground, they were still a little surprised. They didn't seem to have left for long, right? Gong Dai killed so many people? And these white-clothed women, weren't they from the sacred lake? Seeing that Gong Dai was still adjusting his breath, Si Wuyen told Long Qing Wu Ji everything. When he heard that Gong Dai alone killed so many people from the sacred lake in a very short time, Long Qing Wu Ji was a little surprised. The sacred lake also had ranks. He picked up the female leader's life plate and saw that their martial arts were very high, and their positions were top-notch in the sacred lake. To be able to kill so many people in an instant, how high was Gong Dai's martial arts? And with so many people, they should have used up half of the sacred lake's strength, just to catch a woman. No matter what, this was a big matter. If all of this was part of the sacred lake's scheme, and they wanted to make Lu Yi experience the same chaos as Yuhing, he, Long Qing Wu Ji, would never allow it. Everyone hurried through the night and finally arrived at King City at dawn. Gong Yimo had been waiting outside the city for a long time. She asked Si Wuyen to keep all the cattail wave grass seeds first, so as not to alert the enemy, and to make it easier to track them down. Then she told Longqing Wuji that Longqing Ting Shui had returned. Longqing Wuji frowned slightly. What's going on? I clearly said that no one can enter or leave King City. How did she get in? Gong Yimo shrugged. I don't know, your mother thought of a way to let her in. Then she told Longqing Wuji about Longqing Ting Shui colluding with the remnants of the Snow Clan, and how they wanted to spread the goo poison. She also said that she wanted to cast a long line to catch a big fish. When Longqing Wuji heard this, he clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. Especially when he heard that Longqing Ting Shui had asked the old princess consort to poison them, he wanted to strangle her to death right now. But for the sake of the big plan, he endured it and entered the city with a murderous look. There were not many cavalrymen infected with the goo poison, only a few, so it was not difficult to deal with. The ones that were difficult to deal with were his sister and parents, so Longqing Wuji went straight to the old princess consort and the others. Gong Yimo did not like to watch this kind of family drama, so she and Gong Dai went to the place arranged by Longqing Wuji to rest. Shulian and Si Wuyen also stayed in the same hall as them to ensure their safety. Gong Yimo saw that Gong Dai looked tired and her heart ached. Plus, she did not sleep last night, so she went to bed to rest. After washing up, Gong Dai hugged Gong Yimo and laid down on the bed. She was very sleepy before, but being hugged by Gong Dai like this, Gong Yimo could not fall asleep. She said softly, Gong Dai. What did you do? Just now, my mother pulled me and said a lot of things. She was full of praise for you. Gong Dai narrowed his eyes and looked at her. His cold face brightened, revealing a proud smile. There is no mother-in-law that I can't deal with. Gong Yimo was unhappy when she heard this. So, you can also deal with other people's mother-in-law. Gong Dai hugged her and said seriously. I only have one wife, how can I have many mothers-in-law? Gong Emo still wanted to nitpick, but Gong Ju kissed her. He gently licked her lips and occasionally bit them twice. The temperature of the bed instantly rose, but it wasn't a passionate entanglement. Instead, it was a feeling of tenderness and sweetness. His royal sister was cuter when her mouth was blocked. Chapter 726. Gong Yimo was hugged by him and kissed until she was dizzy. Even though he didn't kiss her deeply and only licked and bit her, she was completely covered by his cold taste and felt as if she had been swallowed by him. Do you still want to talk? At this moment, his voice was low and gentle no matter how one looked at it. Gong Yimo blinked and looked at him in high spirits. More. These two words suddenly made Gong Dai's eyes seem to be on fire. He hugged her tightly and bit her until she couldn't make any other sound other than moaning. Gong Yimo couldn't help but hit him. You're squashing the child. Gong Dai quickly wanted to let go when he heard that, but at this moment, the child in her stomach suddenly kicked. It was really a kick, and Gong Dai could feel it through his clothes. Thus, the two adults were stunned. Actually, in the past month, the child in her stomach had moved many times, but this was the first time it was so obvious. And it was also the first time Gong Dai felt that the little life was protesting against him. At that moment, he suddenly had an extremely strange feeling. He hugged Gong Yimo and didn't dare to move at all. After a long time, Gong Yimo's stomach didn't move again. Gong Dai was a little disappointed, so he lowered his voice and asked, "Why isn't he moving?" Seeing that he asked a stupid question without realizing it, Gong Yimo smiled gently. "Maybe you didn't squash him." Gong Dai was a little conflicted when he heard that. On one hand, he wanted to hug his wife tightly and let the child kick him again, but on the other hand, he was afraid that it wouldn't be good to squash him. Then the next time he moves, you must tell me. Gong Yimo looked at his serious face and couldn't help but laugh. Gong Dai, are you nervous? No. Gong Dai said very seriously. He was the great regent. It was just a child, so he wasn't nervous. Gong Yimo was charmed by his cuteness and couldn't help but lean over and bite his lips. What should I do? You're so cute that I just want to eat you up. Gong Dai looked like he was struggling. No, I have to control myself. TSK, I wonder who was the one who didn't control himself before. What if I do? Gong Yimo squinted her eyes and teased him. She wanted to see how strong Gong Dai's willpower was. Gong Dai suddenly stopped struggling. I'll be gentle. As he spoke, he flipped Gong Yimo over so that her back was facing him. This position made Gong Yimo blush. I was just teasing you. Are you serious? Gong Dai pursed his lips. I won't reject any request from royal sister. But that impatient action clearly showed that he couldn't hold it in any longer. Gong Yimo gritted her teeth with a red face. You're too much. I don't want to play anymore. Go to sleep. As she spoke, she wanted to turn over and sleep, but Gong Dai forcefully stopped her. She maintained her ambiguous position with her back nestled in his embrace. He whispered in her ear. Royal sister once said that women love to say the opposite. If you say that I'm too much, it means that I'm not too much. If you say that you don't want to play anymore, it means that you want to continue. So I've decided to satisfy you. As he spoke, he tore off her clothes under her body. Gong Yimo let out a soft cry, then covered her mouth with both hands and gritted her teeth. Can't you be a little quieter? Mother and Si Wuyen are just next door. Gong Dai raised his eyebrows slightly. Whether they find out or not depends on your little mouth. Royal sister. I'm coming. Gong Yimo groaned and bit the blanket in her mouth. Under the blanket, she was letting Gong Dai do whatever he wanted. Gong Dai frowned and moved a little. Suddenly, he leaned forward and whispered in her ear. Royal sister, you're too tight. For the sake of the child, I have to do it personally. Gong Yimo shrank into the blanket. You beast. Once it started, it was out of control. Because Gong Yimo was biting the blanket and didn't make any sound, the outsiders thought that they were still resting and didn't call for lunch. In the afternoon, Gong Yimo was so sleepy that she begged like a kitten. Only then did Gong Dai gradually stop for the sake of the child. After helping Gong Yimo wash up, he also simply freshened up. Then, he hugged Gong Yimo, who was about to fall asleep, and asked sullenly. Royal elder sister, when will your husband be able to indulge himself? Gong Yimo heard this and glared at him tiredly. For the sake of the child, he was already so beastly even after restraining himself. When the child was born, how was she going to live? She suddenly had the urge to get pregnant for 2 or 3 years. Otherwise, her little body that wasn't even 19 years old wouldn't be able to stand a big bad wolf like Gong Dai. Gong Dai hugged her and couldn't help but kiss her a few more times sweetly before hugging her and the child to rest. He was really very restrained. Other than the first 2 times when he couldn't control himself, he hadn't eaten his fill since. He didn't dare to use too much force, let alone indulge himself. But when he thought of the child between them, he was satisfied. Gong Dai sighed with emotion. He never thought that one day, he would become like this. In his heart, there was only his wife and child. There was only a small family and a small world. But why did he seem to be enjoying it so much? That happiness was something that no amount of power could exchange for. Gong Dai kissed Gong Yimo's sleeping little face again and hugged her to sleep with satisfaction. At Longqing Wuji's side, there was a huge argument. The old princess consort wanted her daughter to stay, but Longqing Wuji didn't allow Longqing Tingshui to stay. In the end, Longqing Tingshui could stay, but she couldn't leave the palace to avoid embarrassing herself. Longqing Tingshui cried and looked very obedient on the surface, but in her heart, she cursed Longqing Wuji. When Gong Emo came, he welcomed her with joy. When she came, he begged her to stay. In the end, who was his sister? What was so good about Gong Emo? Didn't she just bring Lu Ye's crops? What did it matter if those inferior people didn't have enough to eat and died? Didn't she just supervise the construction of the Three Kingdoms horse path? Why was everyone singing her praises? She didn't build it herself. What Longqing Tingshui didn't know was that Gong Yimo's greatest strength was that she could break the barriers between countries. She could easily make countries cooperate with each other without any grudges. It could be said that in any dynasty, there wouldn't be such a harmonious time. When Longqing Tingshui came out of the main hall, she bumped into Gong Yimo and Gong Dai. Gong Yimo's stomach deeply stimulated her. Wasn't Dai Yu State very strict about getting pregnant before marriage? Ordinary women should be dragged to the pig cage and drowned in it. Why? How could Gong Yimo be so glorious? How could there be such an outstanding man like Gong Dai? Gong Yimo was stunned for a moment when she saw her, but she didn't say anything. Gong Dai didn't even look at Longqing Tingshui. The royal sister said that this woman had feelings for him, which made Gong Dai instantly mark her as a key enemy in his heart. If it wasn't for the fact that he still needed her, he would have gotten rid of this hidden danger long ago. Chapter 727. But Longqing Tingshui didn't know it. She looked at Gong Dai coming, her heart was full of desire. Now Gong Dai had become the ruler of Dai Yu State. Dai Yu State was such a rich country, but it belonged to this man. And this man's martial arts were strong. He didn't have any power, but he was also very handsome. That tall and straight posture, full of power and waist, made Longqing Tingshui a little thirsty. If Gong Dai was infected with the child goo, she would make him serve her on the bed every day, and everything he had would become hers. As if disgusted by Longqing Tingshui's strong desire, Gong Dai suddenly turned his head and looked at her coldly. That look was indescribably cold. Gong Yimo pulled him back, and he gave up the impulse to kill Longqing Tingshui. The royal sister was right. The most important thing now was to find the remnants of the Snow clan. He just had to endure. So Longqing Tingshui didn't know that in just a face-to-face, she almost died in the hands of Gong Dai. At the moment when they passed each other, Longqing Tingshui and Gong Yimo didn't talk, but the turbulence rose again, as if the horn of war was blown. Gong Yimo smiled gently and didn't want to pay attention to it. For a few days, Lu Yi was safe. First, the people sent by the sacred lake were all killed by Gong Dai, and no one reported back. Moreover, Longqing Tingshui's plot was interrupted because Gong Yimo came back early. Longqing Tingshui anxiously waited in the palace for a few days, but there was no news of missing people or unrest in the city. It was as if no one was poisoned at all. Could it be that the people sent out betrayed them? Longqing Tingshui was a little hesitant. After waiting for a week, she finally moved. This time, she only came back with 2 people. One was the person sent by the Snow clan, who was sent out without any news, and the other was her own person, who was also her favorite pet. You go out, go to the sacred lake, and put this down. She took out an inconspicuous stone. This was the only way she could see the Snow clan. When Longqing Wuji found out, he didn't stop them. The martial law that should be enforced in the city was never relaxed. However, when Longqingting Shui cried and begged him to let her people out to buy the freshest ice lotus, he pretended to be impatient and agreed, letting her guards out of the city. Gong Yimo didn't have any feelings about the upcoming war. She had been with Shui Lian these days, she had been listening to her parenting tips. But when she was Shui's mother's she was a mother, and she was face when she said some words. She was Shui's, she was Shui of est. Shui's, Shui she. Shui est. Gong Yimo didn't say anything, but Shui Lian's entourage couldn't stand it anymore and complained for Fuya. King has been very busy recently. He was helping the new clansman settle down, and accidentally hurt his hand. That's why he didn't reply with many words. King told us not to say, because he was afraid you would be worried. Shui Lian's face turned red. She glared at that person. You talk too much. That person smiled and left. The relationship between the two masters was so good. It was a blessing for them as subordinates. At this time, someone came over and whispered a few words in Gong Yimo's ear. Gong Yimo secretly smiled. It's here. The Snow clan had used all kinds of methods to come and see Longqingting Shui. They directly killed the person sent by Longqingting Shui, took off his face, put it on, and then sneaked into King's city. When Longqingting Shui saw him, she was shocked. You killed him. That person smiled. Who told your good brother to keep a close eye on you? We couldn't sneak in, so we had to do this. Longqingting Shui's face twisted for a while, but she didn't say anything in the end. The person you gave me was disobedient. I asked him to poison him, but he didn't come back. Because the other party was wearing someone else's face, he didn't have any expression. He said calmly. He was killed. Master sent news that the child Gu in his body died. Longqingting Shui's face twisted for a moment. Who killed him? Tianlong City's Wuji went to pick him up. If nothing happens to King City, those generals won't meddle in other people's business. I don't know. The man's voice was a bit cold. I don't know who did it, and none of the people sent to intercept Gong Dai came back. Longqingting Shui's eyes turned. You want to catch Gong Yimo's mother? That woman called Shui Lian. She said with some bad intentions. If I can help you catch her, can you give me more of the same heart Gu? Seeing the other party's scheme, the man sneered. No need, we already have a way to catch her, and it's foolproof. Longqingting Shui's hopes were dashed, and she said angrily, then what do we do now? The palace is too tight, my useless mother refused to poison Longqing Wuji. Hearing this, the person smiled. I came for this. The poison must be used, and... He leaned over and whispered into Longqingting Shui's ear. Longqingting Shui's eyes lit up. Gong Yimo couldn't hear clearly. She narrowed her eyes and was a little unhappy. After the two finished their discussion, Gong Yimo continued to guard Longqingting Shui, while Gong Dai went with that person. As the saying goes, cast a long line to catch a big fish. If you want to know how big the fish is, you have to consider the fisherman's patience. Longqingting Shui sat in the room for a while, then went to the old princess consort. She forced the old princess consort to poison her, but the old princess consort refused. She used the trump card that the person told her just now. Mother, I already know that Brother Wang isn't your son. She smiled deeply. Seeing the old princess consort pale in fright, she was even more pleased. If you don't poison him, your daughter will tell father that you had an affair with a guard with blue eyes in order to be promoted. That's why you had the chance to get pregnant and ascend the throne. What do you think father will do to you? She would be beaten to death. Thinking of the increasingly irritable old King Lu Yi, the old princess consort's eyes flickered. Go. Mother. Brother Wang doesn't have the royal bloodline, he's just the son of a lowly guard, and I'm your only child. The blood in my body is enough for me to ascend the throne. The old princess consort had no choice. Under coercion, she finally agreed. Gong Dai also found the other party's lair, but there was no one in the lair. They didn't make a move first. In the next few days, Long Qing Ting Shui began to act frequently. While she let the old princess consort sneak in, she met many ministers in private. Because they were all in the palace, Long Qing Ting Shui didn't care. Some people met her, but she rejected some. Every time he heard a servant report that Long Qing Ting Shui had hooked up with some minister in the garden, he felt disgusted. No wonder his personality was so different from Long Qing Ting Shui. It turned out that he wasn't her biological son. Chapter 728. This was also good, he could use Long Qing Ting Shui to test these ministers, to see how loyal they were to him. The sky was gloomy, because it was close to the end of the year, the snow was getting heavier. In the past, at this time, although the weather was cold, the people gradually became lively for the new year, especially this winter, no one starved. But because of the martial law in King's City and a series of other actions, the people smelled an unusual sense of danger, so most of the time they hid at home, waiting for the storm to pass. War was about to break out. Holy Lake suddenly declared war on Luyi King's City. When Long Qing Wuji received the letter of challenge, he naturally did not decline. He had long been dissatisfied with Luyi having an existence that was above the royal authority. Now, he could use this opportunity to completely eliminate the people of Holy Lake. And if everything was established, Holy Lake would have already been invaded by the remnants of the Snow Clan. It was no longer the Holy Land that was built purely for cultivation, it should be destroyed. Long Qing Wuji ordered his troops to attack, because Holy Lake also had many believers, so if he wanted to win this battle, he had to bring a lot of people. Knowing that Long Qing Wuji had taken the poison last night, the leader of Holy Lake was not afraid at all, and challenged Long Qing Wuji to a battle in the Sky Eagle grassland. Gong Dai and Gong Yimo knew that because Long Qing Wuji was not poisoned, the other party would be caught off guard if they underestimated him. And because Long Qing Wuji was already prepared, he brought enough people and Si Wuyan's medicine. The goal was not to win, but to completely destroy Holy Lake's position among the believers, and to pull all those who were outside the royal authority over to their side. Long Qing Ting Shui thought she had succeeded. King's City's military strength was empty, her good brother was about to die, so she did not hide anymore, and immediately led the ministers to attack. It was also because those people were greedy and had ulterior motives, they were controlled by Long Qing Ting Shui's poison, so they did not dare to resist, and agreed to let Long Qing Ting Shui be the queen. Everything was expected, but Gong Yimo heard the commotion in King's City, and was a little uneasy. After luring Long Qing Wuji out, the next step should be to bring people in to poison us, create chaos, and tie us down, right? I'm guessing that those people behind the scenes won't let Long Chang's Ting Shui off so easily. When they come in, we must catch them. As expected, because Dragon City's Wuji had taken away a large number of troops, there was a hole in King's City. Dragon City's Ting Shui ordered people to bring in 7 or 8 people. Gong Yimo could clearly see that Dong Wani was among them. Looking at Dong Wani's unwilling expression, I reckon she has already been poisoned with the heart bug. TSK, asking a tiger for its skin, serves her right. Upon hearing this, Gong Dai said in a low voice, news has come from there. Long Chang's Ting Shui has gathered a portion of Lu Ye's ministers and announced publicly on the Divine Eagle platform that Long Chang's Wuji is not of the Long Qing clan's bloodline and that she should inherit the throne. Furthermore, she has captured all the ministers who opposed her. Gong Yimo rubbed her chin. On one hand, she poisoned Long Cheng's Wuji, and on the other, she ordered the sacred lake to attack. She wanted Long Cheng's Wuji to leave King City with those who are loyal to him. At that time, Long Cheng's Wuji will suddenly die, and the group will be leaderless. The people he brings out will probably all die in the grasslands. Then, she poisoned the people and tried to manipulate them to deal with us. Finally, she instigated a portion of the ministers to be used by her. It's really a chain of events. If we had not foreseen this, we might have been able to catch Long Cheng's Wuji off guard. Do we make a move now? Gong Dai had long wanted to kill Long Cheng's Ting Shui. He was just waiting for her to make a move so that he could catch them all in one fell swoop. Let's do it. Gong Yimo frowned. I'm just curious. If they poisoned the people in the city to delay us, this is not enough. They should have other tricks up their sleeves. Furthermore, the sacred lake has existed for so long. Dong Wani is definitely not the only mastermind behind this. Gong Dai stroked her hair. We'll deal with whatever comes our way. Let's take down this group of people first. Gong Yimo nodded. Today, she had to remove all the remnants of Lu Ye's Snow clan. On the Divine Eagle platform, Long Cheng's Ting Shui proclaimed herself as the queen, forcing everyone to witness this scene. When they heard that Longqing Wuji did not have the bloodline of the Longqing family, the commoners were shocked. This was because the people of Lu Yi placed great importance on bloodlines. The old king Lu Yi reacted and kicked the old Wang Fei to the ground. Bitch! You actually dared to lie to me. The old princess was so shocked that she forgot to cry out in pain. She pointed at the high and mighty Long Cheng's Ting Shui and scolded, "Didn't you say that you wouldn't tell anyone? I promised to help you poison Wuji. Why are you still doing this to me?" Long Cheng's Ting Shui sat on the Divine Eagle throne and smiled coldly. Because this king does not need a shameless mother. With that, she sent someone to throw the old princess into the stable. Out of sight, out of mind. Seeing that she was so cruel to her own mother, the ministers controlled by Long Cheng's Ting Shui trembled slightly and did not dare to speak. Before the people could react, Long Cheng's Ting Shui had captured all the disobedient ministers. This was because among the ministers who had betrayed her, there was a general. She said in a low voice, "This king will give you one last chance. Submit or die." Someone still did not understand the situation and scolded, "You witch. Just you wait. Once the king kills those rioters at the sacred lake, he will come back to kill you." Long Cheng's Ting Shui smiled lightly. Brother King has been poisoned and can't come back. Not only can he not come back, those who are loyal to him will not come back either. Didn't you hear just now? It was his mother who personally fed him the poison. How could he refuse? Seeing that the old minister was stunned, Long Cheng's Ting Shui laughed proudly. The sacred ground is this king's people. Not long after, the entire king's city will be filled with this king's men of sacrifice. Brother King's bloodline is lowly and does not deserve to be the king. Only this king. I am worthy of being the king. Do you submit or not? These people looked at each other when they heard this. Finally, a bearded old minister shouted. I would rather die than submit to you, witch. Then go to hell. Long Cheng's Ting Shui smiled when she heard this. She really enjoyed the feeling of having power in her hands. Wait. Suddenly, a person walked forward. He spoke calmly and smiled at Long Cheng's Ting Shui. Long Cheng's Wuji is not of the Longqing family's bloodline, but the Longqing family is not without men. They don't need a woman like you to take charge. Long Cheng's Ting Shui was stopped by someone. She looked at him strangely. Who are you? At this time, a charming woman lying next to King Lu Yi said coquettishly with a flash of light in her eyes. King, He is the son I gave birth to for you more than 10 years ago. This sentence instantly made Long Cheng's Ting Shue's face twist. Previously, she did not care about King Lu Ye's trivial matters because he was going to die anyway. But now, he actually gave her another son. King Lu Yi was very excited when he heard this. Really? Your child from more than 10 years ago is really still alive? Of course it's true. Xue Qinzhong smiled and looked at King Lu Yi. She did not take down Yuheng, but taking down Lu Yi was also not bad. Chapter 729. That's impossible. Long Ting Shui didn't believe it, she couldn't have suddenly gained a brother. It was indeed impossible, how could Xue Qinzhong be Lu Ye's man? But today, all of Long Cheng's people were going to die, who would know if he wasn't? Xue Qinzhong walked to Long Ting Shui and laughed, "Thank you sister, you helped me get rid of the obstacles, invited all the officials here, and poisoned the city. When I become Lu Ye's king, I won't treat you badly." You! Long Ting Shui knew she was tricked by the Shui clan. They didn't want to cooperate with her, but they wanted to control Lu Ye's political power through her. She couldn't help but scream at old King Lu Yi, "Father! He's not of Long Cheng's bloodline. Are you crazy?" Old King Lu Yi wanted to say something, but the enchanting beauty beside him laughed and said, "He's our child, isn't he?" King Lu Yi nodded, "Yes, he is." Xue Qinzhong laughed. This woman was a chess piece he placed in Lu Ye's palace a few years ago, she was only useful now. Long Ting Shui was shocked, she turned to the officials who supported her and said, "Take this thief down. He's not of Long Cheng's." But those people didn't move, they secretly glanced at Xue Qinzhong's face. Xue Qinzhong laughed, "It's useless, thank you for digging a tunnel for me to come in." These few days, Long Cheng Wuji was very strict, I couldn't do anything in the city, so I could only do it to these people. Not only them, I even let them poison their subordinates, which means, these guards, all listen to me now. After all, I gave you the poison, your antidote is fake, the one in my hand is real, isn't it obvious who they'll listen to? Although the ministers who were poisoned were unwilling, at this time, the general trend was irresistible. They knelt down one after another and shouted, "Greetings, new king." Other than the deployment of the Divine Eagle stage, Xue Qinzhong also worked with Dong Wani to coordinate from the inside. Dong Wani and the other 6 Snow Race clansmen entered through the gate, and they split into 2 groups. One group went to create chaos in the city, and the other group went to destroy the defense of King's City. More than half of the guards surrounding the city were taken away. The remaining ones were all loyal to Dragon City Wuji. However, as long as there was a traitor among them, it would be very easy to break down the defense. The 6 Snow clan members killed 6 of the guards and used their faces to destroy the defense. Dong Wani poisoned the city to create chaos. They thought it was foolproof, but they didn't expect to encounter Gong Dai before they even started to move. They didn't know how Gong Dai could tell that they were wearing masks. In a panic, they scattered and fled in all directions, wondering in their hearts, could it be that they were all deceived by that woman, Ting Shui of Longqing? Otherwise, why would Gong Dai be able to predict the future? Dong Wani saw that the situation was not right, and used the poison on her body to escape. Gong Yimo said to Gong Dai, "You go and kill those 6 people." Dong Wani, "I'll do it." Saying this, she went to chase her personally. She let her escape last time, but not this time. Dong Wani hid everywhere, because most of the people had gone to the Divine Eagle stage, she had nowhere to hide. In the end, she was forced into a dead end by Gong Yimo. She knew that she had no way to survive today, and turned to glare at Gong Yimo. If not for Gong Yimo using the fake Jade Heart to deceive her, she wouldn't have fallen out with the Snow clan over the fake Jade Heart, and wouldn't have been forced to eat the heart with heart's goo. Gong Yimo. You bitch. You ruined my life. Gong Yimo walked over with her sword, her face cold. I admit that I ruined you, but if I didn't, countless people would have been ruined by you. Just like the people of King City, Higu. Dong Wani helped those crazy people burn everywhere, and did not care about other people's lives at all. The sword closed in, and Dong Wani finally started to tremble. She suppressed her hatred and begged, "Please let me go. Don't you want to cure the goo poison? I already have an idea. Let me go, and I will definitely make the antidote. There's no need." Gong Yimo waved her hand, and Dong Wani's throat was slit, and she died with her eyes wide open. She was considered a genius, and from the high and mighty Empress Dowager to her death in a nameless alley, it had only been a year. At this moment, Gong Dai walked to her side. Seeing that Gong Yimo was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief. The crisis in the city has been resolved. Dragon City Limitless sent a message, saying that he has already taken control of the situation and destroyed the remaining forces of the Sacred Lake. As long as he gets rid of the people from the Divine Eagle stage, the Sacred Lake will completely disappear from Luyi. Gong Yimo frowned. Gong Dai, I still feel that something is wrong. Although we have the foresight and are more powerful than them, everything is going too smoothly. After thinking about it, only my mother's place is not safe enough. I will go to the Divine Eagle platform, and you can go and look for my mother. How about that? Gong Dai was not willing to part with her, but this time, he did not say much and agreed. Protect yourself well. I will bring her to you soon. N. Gong Yimo nodded, and the two of them went their separate ways. Long Cheng's Ting Shui panicked. She stood up from her eagle seat and grabbed Shui Qinzhong's clothes like a crazy demon, her face twisted. You are not from the Longqing family. You cannot call yourself king. Brother Wang will not let you go. He will come back and kill you. Shui Qinzhong looked down at her, so thank you for helping me poison him. Now, he is probably dead in the Divine Eagle grassland. Long Cheng's Ting Shui was finally afraid. She had been used so thoroughly. Gong Yimo. Gong Yimo is also in the Imperial City. If you do this, she will not let you go. Shui Qinzhong's eyes flashed coldly. Since I dared to appear, I naturally have the confidence to not be killed. They should be in the city now, right? This amount of time is enough for me to ascend to the throne. As long as I turn everyone here into my puppets, what can Gong Yimo do to me? As he spoke, he easily pushed Long Cheng's Ting Shui away. You! Long Cheng's Ting Shui fell to the ground. Her father was controlled by the other party, the ministers were controlled by the other party, and the disobedient ministers were captured by the guards. She did not have a chance to turn the situation around. She worked so hard to curry favor, but in the end, it was all for someone else. Man, the princess is delirious. Take her down. Also, my father is old, take him away. Yes. Those guards were poisoned, and naturally did not dare to disobey Shui Qinzhong. They dragged Long Cheng's Ting Shui away. Hearing her cursing, they could not help but sigh. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. At this moment, the commoners were stunned. What was going on with all these twists and turns? They still hoped that Longqing Wuji would be their king. No matter if he had blood or not. Before the commoners could protest, Shui Qinzhong sat on the eagle seat and looked at the people below with a smile. Chapter 730. You can disobey me, because those who don't obey me will soon become puppets. After he finished speaking, he gave the order, and all the guards on the scene moved out, trapping the commoners who were about to run away on the Divine Eagle platform. The current situation was that the guards surrounding the city did not dare to leave as they were afraid of being attacked by the enemy. The guards on the Divine Eagle stage were poisoned and had no choice but to obey Shui Qianzhong. In addition to the ministers, those who obeyed stood aside, those who did not were all captured. Longqing Wuji was not here, Longqing Ting Shui and old Lu Yi were all under his control. Since Shui Qianzhong had reached this step, he already had the power in his hands. The only thing he needed to do now was to turn all the commoners in the city into puppets so that when Gong Yimo came, he would have the power to fight back. The guards captured a dozen people who tried to resist and prepared to kill them as an example. The commoners below were all trembling. If they knew this would happen, they would not have come to the Divine Eagle stage. But since the enemy was so arrogant, it was obvious that the city was not safe. After the dozen people knelt down, Shui Qianzhong ordered people to feed them the goo poison. He looked down at the silent commoners below and smiled. Be afraid, be obedient, he did not mind turning the entire city into puppets. But how could Gong Yimo allow him to succeed? A golden hairpin passed by and knocked over the poison bowl in the guard's hand. Shui Qianzhong was shocked, and his expression changed when he saw who it was. Gong Yimo. Shouldn't she be held back by Dong Wani and the rest? Why did she come so fast? Meeting again, looking at this familiar face from her previous life, Gong Yimo could not help but feel her blood boiling. Shui Qianzhong. You want to be Lu Ye's king, did I agree? On the flagpole below the stage, Gong Yimo stepped on it and looked down. Shui Qianzhong's thoughts were like lightning. If Gong Yimo appeared here, the chaos in the city would definitely be suppressed. He hated it in his heart. He thought that Dong Wani could help him by some time, but she was so useless. Also, Gong Yimo could react so fast, that idiot Longqing Ting Shui must have exposed something. So Longqing Wuji might not be poisoned. His palms were sweating, but he calmed down when he thought of the trump card in his hand. Gong Yimo, I advise you not to interfere, unless you want your mother to die. Gong Yimo's pupils contracted. Impossible, you can't touch her. For her safety, Gong Yimo secretly sent a large number of troops to protect her. In addition, King's City had been heavily guarded. Shui Qianzhong's forces in King's City were not enough to break through Shui Lian's defenses in half a day. Can't move. Shui Qianzhong smiled and took out a hairpin. Is this the hairpin she wore today? Do you think I can't move? How? Why did they have Shui Lian? Before Gong Yimo could react, Shui Qianzhong smiled and said, T. Lu Yi is not the Dai state. It doesn't matter who is the king. Today, as long as you and Gong Dai can stand aside, Shui Lian will be fine. Otherwise, even if I die, I will drag her down with me. Shui Qianzhong's words made Gong Yimo frown. She did not know what to do. Did Gong Dai find out that her mother was caught? She reacted in time. They should not have run far. Could Gong Dai turn the tide in time? Shui Qianzhong saw that Gong Yimo did not answer. He secretly gritted his teeth and winked at those ministers who betrayed him. On the contrary, those loyal ministers who did not betray him were all excited when they saw Gong Yimo. They were tied up, but their eyes were full of hope as they looked at Gong Yimo. Princess, please save Lu Yi. We can't let this villain succeed. That's right, Princess, please save these people. Those guards who followed Shui Qianzhong's orders also started to hesitate. Although they were poisoned, how could they let an outsider harm Lu Ye's people? Shui Qianzhong was so angry that he laughed. You guys are really funny, hoping for a woman to turn the tide. He then said to Gong Yimo, today's matter is a battle between me and Longqing Wuji. If you want to interfere, then wait to collect your mother's corpse. As he spoke, he ordered those guards to continue capturing people and feeding them the poison. He had to be faster. he had to make the entire king's city his people. This way, even if Long Qing Wuji was not poisoned and came back, he would have the strength to fight. Gong Yimo cared so much about her mother, she would not spoil his plan, right? Although she was almost done. Gong Yimo hesitated. At this moment, the Divine Eagle stage was controlled by Xue Qianzhong. If she did not interfere, these people would not be able to escape the fate of becoming puppets. However, if she interfered, what if Xue Qianzhong really killed Xue Lian? After all, he must have guessed that his plan had failed, that Long Qing Wuji was not poisoned, and that Dong Wani had failed. He only had one way left, which was to control King's city. Princess, seeing Gong Yimo hesitating, a minister kowtowed to her, begging her to help. Xue Qianzhong was really anxious. Seeing this, he went forward and kicked that person away. He secretly stared at Gong Yimo nervously. This time, he had mobilized all the forces in the sacred lake. If he was defeated here, then there would be no chance for him to make a comeback. He stepped on the old official's body and looked in Gong Yimo's direction with a cold smile. Gong Yimo, you have to think carefully. Is these people more important or Xue Lian more important? Her blood is not ordinary. If she dies, you will really have no chance. You can only watch the goo poison wreak havoc. Gong Yimo could not help but close her eyes to calm down. She could hear the noise around her ears. Those guards had no choice. Seeing Gong Yimo not moving, they could only listen to her in order to protect themselves. Who knew that at this moment, Gong Yimo suddenly moved? She jumped onto the stage and fought with Xue Qianzhong. Xue Qianzhong's martial arts were not weak. Otherwise, he would not have been by her side in her previous life. However, in her previous life, he followed her to quell the chaos. Now, he was creating chaos. Seeing Gong Yimo move, Xue Qianzhong was shocked and quickly retreated. Those guards stopped. They hoped that the princess could defeat her opponent. Then, they would not have to attack their own people. However, those controlled ministers were anxious. They cherished their lives and hurriedly ordered their subordinates to help Xue Qianzhong. However, their subordinates did not move. Instead, some of them gritted their teeth and released those loyal ministers. So be it. It was better for them to die than for this bad person to succeed and for the whole city to die together. Gong Yimo and Xue Qianzhong's martial arts were strong. In addition, those guards decided to help Gong Yimo and did not interfere. Thus, there were fewer and fewer people on the stage. In the end, the two of them occupied the entire Divine Eagle stage. Xue Qianzhong's expression turned sinister. Gong Yimo. You don't care about Xue Lian's life. What does this Lu Yi have to do with you? Gong Yimo did not reply. Those old ministers below the stage refused to leave. Instead, they knelt down in front of Gong Yimo. Chapter 731. Lu Yi will never forget the princess's kindness. Thank you, princess, for saving my life. They all heard that the other party captured the princess's mother, but the princess still helped Lu Yi. How could they not be grateful for such kindness? When these people bowed, the commoners who were controlled also bowed. It was as if they were safe with Gong Yimo around. The guards looked coldly at the side. They were poisoned, but their conscience was not dead. The princess had helped Lu Yi a few times. Even if they were to die, they would not harm the princess. Those ministers who changed sides seemed to feel the wish from the commoners. Both sides were trembling. They seemed to feel that the situation had changed. She was just a foreign princess. How could she have such a big influence? Not only could she make the guards stop, but she could also make the commoners trust her wholeheartedly. Because Gong Yimo was an outsider, but she was fighting for Lu Yi. As Lu Ye's warriors, they could not drag him down. Because Gong Yimo was an outsider, but she gave Lu Yi high-yield and drought-resistant crops, so that Lu Yi would not have to suffer from hunger. Gong Yimo's influence was so big that no one expected it. It was also out of Xue Qinzhong's expectation. Gong Yimo. Xue Qinzhong pushed Gong Yimo away with his palm. In just a moment, he was already injured. He was not Gong Yimo's opponent. And looking at the guards who changed sides, he was forced to a dead end by Gong Yimo. Must you do this? Even if Xue Lian dies, the poison in your body will not be removed. Don't you know? When the poison develops to the end, there will be no antidote. You will sleep forever. Gong Yimo was stunned. She really did not know this. But she understood one thing and was very sure. You have no chance to kill her. Gong Yimo's eyes flashed. From the beginning, I was thinking that if the mastermind was my mother's brother, he would not be willing to kill my mother. Xue Qinzhong was nervous and quickly said, that may not be true. He is him. I am me. If you really want to cut off my path of survival, I won't let any of you have it easy. Gong Yimo looked at him and suddenly said, he's not in your hands, is he? Her tone was too serious, causing Xue Qinzhong to be stunned. This was the second time they had met, but why did she seem to know him so well? Gong Yimo slowly pulled out a sword. I've thought about it. With your personality, if the person is in your hands, you won't let this life-saving talisman out of your sight. You're greedy, but you're more afraid of death. Her words made Xue Qinzhong a little embarrassed. He secretly hated that he trusted his deployment too much and let the other party take Xue Lian away. Could it be that he still couldn't take down Lu Yi even though he had deployed all his forces for so long? He gritted his teeth. You're not me. How do you know what I want to do? If you want to kill me, then kill me. Anyway, if I die, she will definitely be buried with me. As he spoke, he also drew his sword and rushed forward. You're nervous. In the battle, Gong Yimo's voice was still clearly transmitted to his ears. When you're nervous, your hand holding the sword will be very tight. And you're practicing the wind sword technique. Under normal circumstances, your sword should be as casual as the wind. Xue Qinzhong's pupils constricted. At this time, he didn't have time to care about why Gong Yimo knew him so well. He could only quickly kill Gong Yimo to salvage the situation and control the entire King City. Only then could he resist Gong Dai, who had yet to appear, and Dragon City Limitless, who was about to return. He had no other way out. His eyes stared at Gong Yimo. His martial arts were not as good as Gong Yimo's, but, you want to use your left hand to sneak attack. Gong Yimo's voice made Xue Qinzhong's hand tremble. Because of this hesitation, his left hand that was ready to attack missed. He looked at the dagger in his left hand that was knocked down. He really wanted to ask her, how did she know? Gong Yimo took a step back. You always hide a dagger in your left sleeve because you're naturally left-handed. You've never missed a sneak attack with your left hand. Beside your waist, there's always a needle box. Once you press the switch, countless thin poisonous needles will shoot out. That's your last trump card. Gong Yimo's words were like a heavy blow to him, forcing him to retreat again and again. He had used the sword in his left hand, but he had never used the needle box on his waist. No one knew, so why did she, since you know me so well, when we first met, why did you let the goo poison attack you? All his trump cards were exposed. All his escape routes were blocked. Dragon City Limitless was on the way back. Dong Wani failed. Gong Dai was hiding in the dark. Gong Yimo was not threatened. The situation was hopeless. He actually didn't know that he had lost. Why did Gong Yimo know his temperament so well? Speaking of that time, Gong Yimo's eyes were cold. Anyone who suddenly knew that he had been deceived for more than 10 years by her brother who had gone through fire and water with her would not be able to calm down. She really wanted to know. In her last life, Xue Qianzhong followed her until the end. Did his thoughts never change? Unfortunately, she could not know. The sword was pointed at Xue Qianzhong. Gong Yimo's voice was very cold. I just want to ask you one thing. You want to destroy the world. No matter what happens, you won't change this idea. The word destroy the world made Xue Qianzhong's eyes gloomy. He changed the sword to his left hand and firmly told her word by word. No matter what happens, the more chaotic the world is, the happier I will be. Absolutely, I won't change. His words made Gong Yimo pursed her lips. What was she hoping for? Was she hoping that the twisted human nature would be changed? For people like him, perhaps death was the only relief. That's good. I haven't sparred with you for a long time. Let me see how much you've improved. Xue Qianzhong did not understand what Gong Yimo meant by haven't sparred for a long time. Being forced to the end, he did not seem to be in a hurry. Living in this world, if you're not killing people, you're waiting to be killed. Living was a torture. So when the day came, he would not find it hard to accept. And to be defeated by Gong Yimo who had a strong sense of justice, although he was a bit unwilling, it was still a worthy death, right? Gong Yimo's moves were like lightning. And it was not a killing move. It was like she was giving advice. While she was attacking, she was reminding him. Armpit. Waist. Chest. Tailbone. Too slow, you're still too slow. Xue Qianzhong was beaten back by her. And he felt that Gong Yimo was deliberately humiliating him. She deliberately beat him up in front of everyone until he could not fight back. She also deliberately delayed time so that Long Qing Wuji could deal with him. After all, this was Lu Ye's family matter. Kill me if you want. What is the meaning of this? Humiliating. At this time, those officials who were held hostage by the poison also saw that Gong Yimo was stronger than Xue Qianzhong. Someone started to shout, ask him to hand over the antidote. Other than us, the guards are also poisoned. Chapter 732. They were smart enough to know that they brought innocent people into this. They deserved to be poisoned, but the guards were different. The guards were poisoned because they were controlled by Xue Qianzhong and poisoned their own men. The princess would not sit by and do nothing. Gong Yimo glanced at the guards and they all lowered their heads. It seemed like it was true. Pushing them away, Xue Qianzhong wiped off the blood on his lips and laughed. Do you think I have controlled these cowardly trash after entering the city for a few days? I can't poison them, but I have many other poisons. Everyone here will die with me. Gong Yimo suddenly said. Why don't we make a bet? Xue Qianzhong snorted, don't waste your energy. I know I will die. No matter what you say, someone will die with me. Then let's bet with our lives. Gong Yimo let go of her hand and the sword in her hand fell on the divine eagle stage. She looked at him quietly. This gaze, it was as if they had been together for many years. Maybe he was forced to the end. Everyone below the stage was waiting for him to die. Xue Qianzhong's tight strings suddenly loosened. Bet with your life. Yes. Gong Yimo stepped forward. I will suppress my internal energy to the 5th level and will not use weapons. If you can kill me, you win. If I kill you, you have to hand over the antidote. Xue Qianzhong squinted his eyes. This is the first time I know of such a bet. Are you not afraid that if I lose, I won't hand over the antidote? Gong Yimo suddenly laughed. Your life is hanging by a thread. What are you still thinking about? Why don't we make a bet? You are about to die. Don't you want to play something interesting? Her words were what Xue Qianzhong wanted. He suddenly laughed. All right. I will bet with you. Gong Yimo also laughed and placed an internal energy lock on her body. She really locked her internal energy to the 5th level. Her hands were empty. She waved at Xue Qianzhong. Come. At this moment, Xue Qianzhong did not know if it was an illusion. He felt that he was not in a life and death battle. Instead, he was standing on a training ground. The other party had taught him many times. He shook his head. How could he have such an illusion? I've only met him twice. That sense of familiarity should be because blood is thicker than water. He did not know that Gong Yimo was not Snow's child. He and Gong Yimo were not half-siblings. Getting rid of the distracting thoughts, Xue Qianzhong used all of his power to attack. The sword in his hand danced with the wind, but it was filled with killing intent. Gong Yimo's eyes flashed with a trace of approval. She didn't expect Xue Qianzhong to break out in such a state when he was isolated and helpless. This also showed that he didn't want to die, but he really wasn't afraid of death. Gong Yimo smiled bitterly. Why would such a person want to destroy the world? Slash, stab. Their footsteps intertwined. One of them attacked as fast as lightning, while the other dodged slowly but with ease. Xue Qianzhong frowned. His internal energy was clearly stronger than Gong Yimo's and he had a sword. Why was Gong Yimo able to suppress him? It made him feel that his every move was seen through by her. Gradually, this feeling became more obvious. It was as if they had practiced hundreds and thousands of times. She was extremely familiar with him. Therefore, he couldn't help but withdraw his attacks and use another method to break through her suppression. But no matter if he used the sword in his left hand or right hand, she did not feel any pressure. She knew him better than him. Kill him. Princess, kill him. There were people shouting below the stage. When they heard that the princess was betting with her opponent for their antidote, they were very grateful and very excited. But that was not the case. It was too easy for Gong Yimo to get Xue Qianzhong's antidote. Because Xue Qianzhong had a habit of keeping medicine in the secret pocket on his right chest. The more important it was, the closer it was to him. He was a very stubborn person. It was as if the needles in his needle box had to be 1,000 needles. It was as if the dagger he kept in his left sleeve had to be the length of his palm. Everyone was looking forward to the outcome of this battle. From their point of view, Gong Yimo was the messenger of justice sent by God. This battle was like overthrowing evil. She could obtain a spiritual victory. But the two people on the stage were slowly letting go of their souls. They were really in the battle. Do you know how you can become stronger? Gong Yimo suddenly spoke. During the battle, her voice was still very steady. Xue Qianzhong was stunned. Your battle method is to attack with one hand and defend with the other. You think this is the safest method. But you don't know that because of the sensitivity of your right hand, your defense can't keep up. At the crucial moment, it will cause a little obstruction to your left hand. This obstruction is usually nothing. But at the crucial moment, it can take your life. So to become stronger, you have to give up this habit. Xue Qianzhong's pale face turned red with anger. She dared to question the strategy he had used for so many years. So he could not help but ask. Then what do you think I should do? Gong Yimo grabbed his left wrist and pushed. After pushing him away, she said. People like you who are not afraid of death don't need to defend. You should use both hands to wield the sword. Then your battle power can be doubled. As if there was a spark in his mind, Xue Qianzhong suddenly felt that she was right. If he could wield the sword with both hands, perhaps he would not be suppressed by Gong Yimo. Gong Yimo said again, your right wrist was injured when you were young. You can't wield a heavy sword. But a light sword is very suitable. Your left hand is sensitive. But if you want to attack, the sword in your left hand is too weak. You can try to wield a heavy sword. One light and one heavy, one soft and one hard. That is the most suitable for you. Xue Qianzhong was shocked speechless. He only spoke after a long time. How do you know everything? Gong Yimo smiled. She could still vaguely remember her previous life. Xue Qianzhong ran to her excitedly and told her that he found the most suitable sword technique for himself. She had not recalled it for too long. The memories of her previous life had started to fade. Her smile became colder and colder. During the battle, her movements suddenly became fierce. She directly left a deep claw mark on Xue Qianzhong's chest. It made Xue Qianzhong regain his rationality. No matter how she knew, she was his opponent now. Do you think you'll never regret the beliefs you've held on to? Xue Qianzhong defended step by step. For some reason, when she asked this question again, her firm belief actually wavered in her eyes. I will never regret. Xue Qianzhong gritted his teeth and used his sword to force Gong Yimo away. And Gong Yimo did not pursue this question anymore. Do you know where your biggest flaw is? A malicious smile suddenly appeared on her overly calm face. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.